All right, what up? Yeah, welcome to the DraftKings Week 1 salary special. Behind the wheel tonight, yours truly, Emerson Lotzia, riding shotgun to my left in a matching outfit. We have Adam Levitan here of DK Live, Steve Buchanan in the middle, Julian, Edlow on the far side there. Brendan Glasheen, he's going to be joining us in just a second. But first, guys, a little bit about why we're here. If you couldn't tell by the name of the show, the DraftKings Week 1 Salary Special, we'll be breaking down the DraftKings salaries for Week 1. Shocker. And for those of you watching on Facebook, you're going to notice, guys, please pay attention, a brand spanking new Facebook feature that allows you to answer some of the same questions I'll be asking these guys. You'll get the chance to weigh in on some poll questions as well. Tell us if you think Julian's an idiot, if Steve is smart, or if you're wondering where Adam's dog Jerry is. It's Jerry with a G because it is a female dog. Adam, you have had the chance, though, to look at the money it's going to cost you to roster all these guys for the opener, first NFL Sunday of the year. What immediately catches your eye?
Yeah, I thought the salaries were mostly reasonable and mostly correct, except for the Arizona Cardinals, and that's going to stand out to everybody. They're going to be so massively owned in Week 1. I can tell already everybody's falling all over themselves over Cliff Kingsbury's new offense, over the way Kyler Murray is going to be used. Kyler Murray's what he's going to be able to do with both his legs and his arms. So, to have Kyler Murray as the 14th most expensive quarterback on a 24 quarterback slate, everybody's going to be very excited about him. David Johnson's only $7,700. So those really low Cardinals prices are really what stood out to me.
Steve, what about for you, bud?
Yeah, a lot of the guys that are holding out right now, kind of like Zeke Gordon, they're still priced as they would be if they were playing. And I think that's something that, people are looking into with if they're going to be holding out or not, if that would matter with their salary. But I think they're still priced appropriately no matter, if they end up holding out or not. So that definitely caught my eye because that was something I definitely was thinking of, especially with somebody like Zeke in that whole kind of holding period right now with the Cowboys. So I took a look at that and it was priced as it should be.
All right, Jules, any salaries that really stick out to you and you're like, whoa, what is that about?
Yeah, I agree with where these guys are coming from. Cardinals are underpriced. The holdout guys appropriately priced because why not just price them as if they're going to play, and if they don't, then we fade them. For me, I guess the Minnesota Vikings a little underpriced at home against the Atlanta Falcons. We've got Adam Thielen coming off a huge season. He peaked at $9K last season. He's under $7K, along with Stephon Diggs, along with Dalvin Cook, all in that $6 to $7K range. Good matchup. I thought all of them, the Vikings were a little bit underpriced on this slate, given how fairly everything else was priced.
All right, we're just getting started here, but this is when we deliver on our promise to bring you Brendan Glasheen. He has our first Facebook question, and we'll take a gander at Week 1 quarterback salaries. So the floor is yours, young man.
All right, great start to the program, gentlemen. Thank you. Quarterback play has become so critical in today's NFL. Now, it's not always the number one priority when it comes to fantasy lineup construction, but consider the Week 1 slate doesn't include Big Ben, Deshaun Watson, Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, Kirk Cousins. They were top 10 DraftKings quarterbacks in 2018. So let's have a look at the Week 1 quarterbacks, top 10 salaries. Patrick Mahomes, who was the number one scoring DraftKings quarterback last year. Andrew Luck, there are plenty of concerns about his left calf, and that is being monitored. He's not going to practice all week. Jameis Winston, his salary back in 2018, it never topped $6,300. Here he is at $6,600 against San Francisco. We've all been aware of Cam Newton and his offseason shoulder surgery. How does that impact him into Week 1? There is Baker Mayfield, who has gotten a ton of attention for his beer drinking ability at the ballpark a couple of days ago. Well, he has a career high in salary at $6,400. There is Russell Wilson next. He's taking on a Bengals team that pretty much had the worst defense in football last year. Jared Goff is next at $6,200. We will get to Matt Ryan momentarily. Lamar Jackson, $6,000. And keep in mind, John Harbaugh wants to use him on the ground a lot more this year. He wants to top Cam Newton's carry total from a couple years ago. And then Phillip Rivers in at 10. Dak Prescott is also $5,900 as well. Okay, now time for our first Facebook question of the night to you, the viewers. We mentioned we'd circle back to Matt Ryan, so here we go. Is the Falcons quarterback undervalued at a Week 1 salary of $6,100? Is Matt Ryan undervalued at $6,100 for Week 1? A couple of quick facts before we send it back over to the guys. Believe it or not, Matt Ryan finished only behind Patrick Mahomes as the second highest scoring quarterback on DraftKings in 2018. His production on the road was slightly down last year. He averaged 3.2 DK fantasy points less away from the ATL than at Mercedes-Benz. And Ryan's also lost his last 3 games against the Vikings in the last 2 losses. The Falcons' point totals, 10 points in 2015, 9 points in 2017. We'll let your votes file in. Emerson, we'll go back to you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Gentlemen, it is time to dive a little deeper now into these Week 1 salaries for the quarterbacks. So Mahomes, clearly the top priced QB here, guys, after his record-setting season last year. You just heard Brendan mention it. Checking in at $7,200, $500 more than the next guy. Only signal caller more than $7K. And we're not really asking if he should be number 1, but should he be that much more expensive than the rest of the quarterback field? Steve, let's start with you.
I mean, look, this is somebody who threw 11 touchdowns more than any other quarterback in the NFL last season. Andrew Luck was next with 39, Matt Ryan 35, and then Russell Wilson with 35. And then he was second in passing yards, 5,097. Only Ben Roethlisberger ended up throwing more than him last season. I mean, yes, just going by the stats, this would be the guy that you're looking for and expecting to be the most expensive guy on this slate here. So seeing him at that price tag, definitely no surprise.
Adam, where do you sit on this?
Yeah, I think he's too expensive, especially when we have somebody like Kyler Murray, we have someone like Kirk Cousins, we have someone like Matt Ryan. We have all these guys that are way, way, way cheaper. To me, the way that I would like to look at quarterback play in terms of DraftKings would be 2 offenses, how they mesh together. And the way you get really huge scores is when both offenses can really go off together. And I'm not sure that Jacksonville has what it takes to really turn Patrick Mahomes into a shootout. I think if Jacksonville is going to play well in this game and have a chance to win this game, it's going to be by slowing the game down and playing really good defense. And I do think Jacksonville's defense has a really good chance to bounce back, while Kansas City's offense, by any statistical measure, was a massive outlier last year, and they have a chance to take a step back. So, yeah, it's not the spot for me for Patrick Mahomes, but dude threw 50-something touchdowns last year, 50 touchdowns last year, so he's proven me wrong plenty.
Jules, plain and simple, is he worth it on the road against Jacksonville in Week 1?
No, I'm mostly with Adam here. The only game that Patrick Mahomes failed to throw a touchdown pass last season was against Jacksonville, and that was at home. So now he's going to be on the road here for a Week 1 matchup in Jacksonville. I don't necessarily like the spot for him. Jacksonville's defense might even have a little bit of room to improve. They kind of fell off at the end of last season. And like we just said, we can't expect the same from Kansas City's offense. There just has to be some regression for that. So I don't necessarily think he's going to be worth it here. In season long, could he be? Sure, but this isn't a good place for him to start off as the most expensive quarterback, the only quarterback over $7K. I'm not paying that for him.
Yeah, I think there's some pretty high expectations for Jacksonville's defense to bounce back this year.
You have those expectations, Emerson.
Yeah, maybe I do. Maybe I have some kind of ties to Jacksonville. Who knows? All right, well, the third highest priced quarterback for Week 1, that would be Jameis Winston, $6,600. How much are you buying into the hype, Adam, that like Bruce Arians can turn this fifth-year pro into a fantasy stud? No longer has Fitzpatrick kind of breathing down his neck.
Yeah, it's embarrassing to get benched for Ryan Fitzpatrick, and I get that. I do think that Jameis Winston is set up really, really, really well here. I think that Bruce Arians will be able to keep him somewhat under control while maintaining aggression. We know that Jameis Winston is going to have one of the highest average depths of target
he's
in
got
the entire
he's got
league.
the weapons.
Oh, yeah, and they have no run game, and I think their defense is going to be really bad, and they have really good weapons, like you mentioned, Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, and O.J. Howard. So it's set up really, really well here. Jameis Winston is no bargain, though. I mean, the third most expensive quarterback on the entire slate. You're not getting a bargain on him. You're not getting a bargain on Chris Godwin. You're not getting a bargain on Mike Evans. The only guy maybe you could argue getting a bargain on is O.J. Howard. That said, I do think that Jameis and this Tampa offense will play really well in this spot.
All right, Steve, your thoughts. $6,600 for Jameis in Week 1. Is that a bargain?
I mean, I think people forget how talented he was, and that talent we saw when he was in college. He just threw for under 8,000 yards, 65 touchdowns through 27 games at Florida State. I mean, this is obviously somebody who has that talent, but just hasn't really been able to unlock it at the NFL level. And, the coaching staff has been saying that they're trying to work on his decision-making, and that's been one of his downfalls since he's entered the league. So if they can get his head straight, maybe he's putting too much weight on his shoulders being that former number 1 pick. But like Adam said, he's got Mike Evans, he's got Chris Godwin, he's got a hopefully healthy O.J. Howard. I mean, that's a lot of guys that you can turn to during the season if they can remain healthy, if they can get him back on track. This is one of the most dynamic quarterbacks in the league, potentially.
You like this price point, Jules, for Jameis?
I don't think it's a bargain for Winston. Like, he's probably not a cash play. We probably want to look a little cheaper. And like Glasheen said, this is a guy that maxed out at, 63,000 last year? So he's 300 more in week 1. So I don't think that can qualify as a bargain when a guy's more expensive than he was all of last season. That said, I'm fine playing Winston in GPPs if other people are going to look at these big names around him and say Winston's not there yet on that level. Well, from a fantasy perspective, he might be because he's got Arians there. He's got Mike Evans. He's got Chris Godwin. The lack of running game, I think, is a huge point because that takes away so much from them. And then this is a good matchup. This San Francisco defense was historically bad last season. I don't think they'll be quite as bad, but Winston had this exact matchup. He played San Francisco at home. He scored 26 DraftKings points. So I think this sets up as a good spot for him, and if people think he's overpriced, I'll gladly take him in GPPs.
Right, and don't West Coast teams typically don't perform as well when they're on the East Coast? I believe it's a 4 o'clock game, though, for week 1. Am I reading too much into it? It's just a time.
4:25 kickoff, and I don't care at all about that.
Okay, so it's going to feel like it's 1 o'clock to them if my time zones are correct.
Cool.
Adam, real quick. Yeah, super cool. We have a Facebook question here. Mark Erickson asking, Mayfield overrated at 5th most expensive, ?
No, I don't think so. I think it's really hard for this Cleveland offense to fail given the weapons that they have. I mean, they're just so loaded with Odell and Jarvis Landry and David Njoku and Nick Chubb and Duke Johnson. I mean, it's really hard for Baker to fail. And we saw him. He's just so accurate and so aggressive at the same time. It's hard to find that combination. I think Baker is a fantastic play, even though it's not maybe the best possible matchup against Tennessee. I still think it's a fantastic play, Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, and as we saw over the weekend, he's pretty doggone good at saber-toothing a Miller Lite.
Yeah.
Steve, do you think he's overrated here? Fifth most expensive quarterback?
No, not at all. I mean, the hype is real with Baker Mayfield here. I mean, the additions they made with his offense has just been absolutely stellar. I mean, anytime you can add someone with the caliber of Odell Beckham Jr., I mean, you're going to be going places here. And there's some guys that are not even being talked about. I mean, David Njoku is someone who's not even been talked about in this Cleveland offense, and
there were such high expectations for him, I think, last year, and he didn't perform.
No, absolutely, and I just think there's so many guys that he can turn to. There's so many offensive weapons that they have here that I wouldn't see how they could fail here, kind of like what Adam was saying.
Yeah, I would say too at the quarterback position, we have 11 guys between 6,700 and 5,900. Like, it's so tight in there that I wouldn't worry about Baker's 6,400. If he was 6,100, I definitely want to play Baker. I wouldn't worry about that as much at the quarterback position because everybody is so clustered together.
Julian, Cam Newton's coming off shoulder surgery. He's priced at 6,500, which is higher than the likes of Baker Mayfield or Russell Wilson, Jared Goff. You think this is the right spot for the Panthers Iron Man?
I don't necessarily know if week 1 is going to be the right spot for him, and it's the highest he's been priced since week 13 last year when he had a pretty good matchup against Tampa. He was $6,600. Look, I definitely expect some regression from the Rams. Their defense, it just can't be quite the same. They got a lot of points last season on defensive and special teams touchdowns that they racked up. I guess I just want to see what Newton's arm and shoulder is before trusting him, and maybe by week 1 we'll know that. Maybe we'll see a couple things from him in preseason and in camp that can get us to trust him. But giving an early look at this slate, no, I'm not going to pay $65 for Newton when we've got all these guys we just discussed around him. That said, things can change. He can show us some things. The Rams can show us some things before week 1 that could have me interested, at least in him as a contrarian play. But right now, no.
Yeah, Adam, are you in like a wait-and-see pattern with this guy? We don't really know what his health's going to be.
Yeah, the reports on Cam Newton all offseason have been really, really good. We haven't seen it, but everybody says that his shoulder looks really good. We've seen video of him throwing bombs to Curtis Samuel throughout the month. So I'm pretty optimistic about Cam Newton's health, and I think people forget that. I mean, when Cam Newton is right, he's just an unbelievable fantasy player because they often call his number around the goal line to rush the ball in. He often goes over 30, 40, 50 yards rushing, and that's just such a massive floor. So, and in this spot, I mentioned how two offenses can work together. I think the Rams and the Panthers offense can both work really well together. So I do like Cam at 6,500 also. You haven't asked me about anybody I don't like. Yeah, though. I like everybody.
Okay. Have some patience. Before we go to the next question, Steve, if you took a chance on Andrew Luck's shoulder last year, you might want to do the same with Cam Newton this year?
Yeah, just for me, it's just too early to tell. And he's going to be on a pitch count during the preseason, which is good because we'll kind of ease him back into game here. But I'm not too crazy about taking a recovering quarterback going against, Aaron Donald here, who had 20.5 sacks last season. If you want to talk about somebody who is going to, be gunning for Newton in this game here, it's going to be him. So I'd like to see where how he looks during the preseason. Thankfully, we have enough time to figure that out by the time week 1 rolls around. So it's not a spot that I love for him. I think there's better potential value on here, but I can see the appeal here with his salary.
The 51 points that the DK Sportsbook has the total set at here, that's the second highest on this slate, only behind 51.5 for Kansas City and Jacksonville. So if it's a game we're going to get points, Cam Newton should be a big part of it.
Well, Adam, Rob Martinez on Facebook says Cam Newton not an accurate quarterback. Yeah, I just want you to know.
What do you say about that, Adam?
Yeah, he's right. That doesn't have anything. He can still have fantasy numbers.
Hey, listen, I'm just trying to get everyone involved on Facebook right now, which all you Facebook fam, all you viewers out there, pay attention to this question. Matt Ryan, just the 8th highest quarterback salary. So $6,100 here, guys. How undervalued is he as a DFS option, Jules?
I don't think he's undervalued here. I understand that he was a very high scoring quarterback last season.
Yeah,
and
really high.
He very well could be again this season. At the road against Minnesota to start it off, I think he's appropriately priced at $6,100. If you scroll through his salary last year, it's not like he was much different. A lot of weeks, $5,600, $5,700. It looks like the highest he reached was $6,800 against Tampa Bay. So it's not like he's a guy that's been really pricey in the past, so I think he's fairly priced. One thing about Atlanta that I do like a lot this season, 13 of their 16 games are indoors, and they're clearly an indoor team. They don't play outside until week 11. So that's something in terms of, Matt Ryan, Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, all these guys, something that we can look for as upside for a team that generally doesn't travel all that well, play that well outdoors. So I think Ryan's appropriately priced given the tough Minnesota defense. I do like that it's indoors, I guess.
All right, Adam, what do you think? Because we're talking about a guy who last year 3rd in the league in passing yards and touchdowns thrown.
I love Atlanta's offense this year. I think
There's
they're
another guy you like.
flying so far. Hold on, they're flying so far.
Wait for it.
Under their radar. Draft 2 offensive linemen, which I think was a big hold they had on this team. Calvin Ridley in year 2, I think will be really good. Still have Julio. Matt Ryan is underrated. However, going to Minnesota is really, really tough. And I think Minnesota's going to play a lot of 12 this year and really try to slow the ball down, running a lot with Dalvin Cook. Julian earlier mentioned Dalvin Cook's salary, which is pretty egregious, I think, at just $6K in week 1. So yeah, I think that Minnesota, if they play well, if they play the way they want to play, it could be a really low volume game for Matt Ryan, and that concerns me. But man, as a whole, I'm high on Atlanta this year.
Yeah, and Steve, let's keep in mind, I know Jeff Warwick, another DK Live analyst we have, he's really heartbroken about no Tevin Coleman in Atlanta anymore. So, that could really hurt Matt Ryan.
Yeah, he's got the framed picture of Tevin Coleman. He looks at it at night before he goes to sleep. But, one of the things, too, that I wanted to bring up is that one of the things about Vikings that people worry about that defense, but we saw Xavier Rhodes take a real step back last season. A lot of people say that it could have been from injuries, and that's certainly the case. Even when he was on the field, he was playing. It was 3 or 4 games where he played on less than 65% of the snaps, even when he was healthy. So if that doesn't carry over this year, then obviously they have one of the best quarterbacks in the league. But if he still hasn't gotten back to where we've seen him before, that obviously is a bump to some of the Atlanta receivers in this game, and I think that could kind of bring down the value on some of them because the consensus is that the Minnesota defense is stellar, especially in the secondary. So I think that's going to be a big thing to watch too as well, especially when you look at Julio Jones and Odell Beckham, how they're priced so similarly. And you look at who you got to take there. Well, Beckham's getting all the buzz. He's going to be on a new team, going to want to put on a show and everything. So I think Julio Jones could actually get a little bit looked over in this spot here. But I think $6,100 for Matt Ryan is quite appropriate for the matchup.
All right, Brendan, how do the people watching on Facebook feel about this?
So, Emerson, 52% of people that voted say that Matt Ryan is not undervalued. So to the guy's point, they feel that this salary at $6,100 is not all that bad. And to your points there, guys, again, Minnesota's had his number the last couple of years. They've won 3 straight against Matty Ice and the Falcons.
All right, it's early, but right now, who would you say your favorite quarterback play in week 1 is, Mr. Levitan?
I'm going to leave Kyler Murray for somebody else. I'm going to go with Lamar Jackson. It is really hard for Lamar Jackson to fail when he's going to get 12, 13, 14 rush attempts a game. Many of them designed rush attempts, and then he'll also have scrambles too. And I think it was really hard for him last year to come into a Joe Flacco offense. They just drop him in the middle of the season to a Joe Flacco offense. Was not set up for him whatsoever. Now they have this entire offseason to get ready. Greg Roman's there, worked with Colin Kaepernick, worked with Tyrod Taylor before. I think he'll do great things with Lamar Jackson and really just adding speed as a whole. Marquise Brown, Miles Boykin, Justice Hill, add Mark Ingram also. It's just all set up really well for Lamar Jackson. Also, he gets to play against the Miami team, which I think is pretty clearly in tank mode. So at 6K, I think Lamar Jackson is one of the safer plays on the slate.
You're counting on him doing more damage with his feet, though, right, than through the air?
Sure, yeah, but I think he will take a step forward. It's not like this dude's, people think he's just like never going to be able to throw for more than 200 yards ever. I think he will be. I'm not discounting that.
All right, you mentioned you were going to leave Kyler Murray to someone else. My guess would be that's you, Julian.
Yeah, I'm not much of an outside-the-box thinker. I think Kyler Murray is.
You were the only one who put him right in your top 10 rankings or top 5 or something like that?
Well, yeah, because everybody else is an idiot.
Is that right?
That was, yeah. I mean, Adam wasn't on that show. He's a relatively smart guy. The rest of the guys, Reed, Steve, Gary, and all those bozos. Kyler Murray is going to be a top 10 quarterback this year. Reed had him at like 596th on his ranking, something miserable.
It's bad, like after Blake Bortles.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, I'm going to eat the chalk week 1 on Kyler Murray. He's going to be a cash game quarterback. It's got a high total in that game against the Lions. Arizona's defense isn't very good, so I think, as Adam's been saying, 2 offenses that are working together, I think that can be, an over game where both offenses perform and Murray really benefits through the air and on the ground. I will say for tournament purposes, I'll pay up for Jameis Winston.
Okay, Steven, your go-to quarterback week 1 right now.
I'm kind of digging Carson Wentz right now. I mean, he's just got such an elite amount of receivers on this team. The running back situation is still a mess. Maybe we'll get some more clarity as preseason goes along here, but I think Wentz against a Redskins team that is just going to not be competitive at all. I mean, this game could be over by the second half. They could be running the ball out here, but I think Wentz will already have enough fantasy points to sustain what he could have if he's thrown for the entire game here. But I think Wentz is in such a great spot. Only 5,700 for week 1 just feels too cheap.
All right, guys, we're talking tight ends next, right after we hear from Tyler Sullivan and Pat Mayo about Pat's top stacks for the first football Sunday of the regular season.
All right, thanks, Emerson. Okay, now that we've talked a little bit about the players we like, what about a collection of them? What kind of stacks are you looking at with week 1?
So you can do this one of 2 ways. There are 4 games over 48 projected points on the week 1 main slate. You got the Rams in Carolina, the Chiefs in Jacksonville, San Francisco, Tampa, and Detroit and Arizona. So everyone's going to be all over this Kyler Murray stack. Not only are the Cardinals in a highly projected game against a bad defense, everyone's super high on the number 1 overall pick, and all these Cardinals are super cheap. So you can fill out the rest of your lineup with whoever you like. So if you did want to go Kyler Murray, David Johnson, even Christian Kirk, it saves so much salary cap space. Hell, you can bring it back with Kenny Golladay if you want as a game stack. The one that I really like is the Tampa-San Francisco game, and you can go full game stack on either side if you wanted to. So you could have Winston, you could have Godwin, you could have O.J. Howard, you could have Mike Evans, and then bring it back with, hell, if you want to save money, a Deebo Samuel. I don't love that one so much, but you could have Dante Pettis coming back. Or you could just stack all these Niners, which is way cheaper. Garoppolo is undervalued just because we haven't seen him. And so he's 2 years ago news now. No one wants it. They want to pay down for Kyler Murray $100 cheaper. But this is a fantastic spot, a projected shootout game. You can pair him with Pettis, with George Kittle, or you could bring it back with a Mike Evans on the other side or a Godwin on the other side and then find value for the rest of your lineup. So that is the single game on either side or even blended together that I like is the best week 1 stack.
Well, Bruce Arians is going to want to air it out.
He's going to do chucking.
It's going to be a fun offense all year. All right, Emerson, back to you.
All right, back here live in the DK studios. Please stop giggling down there. For our DraftKings Week 1 salary special, I'm Emerson. You know these 3, Adam, Steve, Julian. So far, so good from you guys on Facebook. We'll keep bringing you that new feature on the book, allowing you to chime in on some of the questions and polls I throw their way. Turning our attention now, though, to the tight ends. Brendan Gosheen has their Week 1 salaries and our next Facebook question.
All right, fellas, let's get to the tight ends. And this is a tough position to read on this slate because it's hard to find someone here in the top 10 to trust outside of the top 3. So without further ado, Travis Kelce was the top scoring fantasy tight end in DraftKings last year. George Kittle files in next behind him at 6,600. Zach Ertz, worth noting, only 4.5 DK points against the Redskins last year in Week 17, and the Eagles needed those games to make the playoffs. OJ, and this is when it gets really murky. OJ Howard at 5K against San Francisco. Notice the drop-off. He was on IR last November, foot and ankle issues. You'll hear a trend. Evan Ingram, 4,800. He missed 5 games. Hamstring injury. Eric Ebron, 4,100. Double-digit DK points. He was excellent down the stretch, but he had off-season groin surgery. Hunter Henry makes this list at 3,900. He didn't play a single game last year, except he had 1 target in a playoff game against the Patriots. He tore his ACL last May. David Njoku files in next in 8th at 3,700. And then 2 more injury-prone guys. Jordan Reed, 3,600. He had surgery on both of his big toes. That sounds super painful in the offseason. And then Delaney Walker at 10, 3,500. He was hurt Week 1 last year, ankle injury. He is also 35 years old, heading into his 14th season. So this leads into our Facebook question for you, the viewers. Which of these tight ends will have the better fantasy season in 2019? You get 3 choices. OJ Howard, Evan Ingram, or Eric Ebron? Who is going to have the better season of those 3? I would imagine, Emerson, inconsistency and health will be factored into the opinions of our experts.
Yeah, for sure. Looks like OJ Howard has the early lead there, but Adam, Steve, Jules. Let's talk some tight end salaries here at the top. No surprise. It's the killer K's. Kelce, 7,100. Kittle, 6,600. Travis here obviously has the resume, but who sees Kittle here dethroning him as the top fantasy tight end this season? Maybe you, Adam?
I don't think so.
Or does he have potential to do it?
Yeah, I mean, George Kittle, for sure, one of the best athletes in the position in the entire NFL and probably the best yak tight end in the entire NFL. That said, last year when George Kittle was destroying, I mean, they had nobody out there. They were starting like Kendrick Bourne and like I don't even know who else they had out there. Now I think they have a lot more pieces. They have Deebo Samuel. They have Dante Pettis, who was hurt a lot of last year. They bring in Tevin Coleman. They have Matt Breida, hopefully healthy. They get Jerick McKinnon back, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that they won't be as focused on throwing to George Kittle this year. That said, certainly a good matchup against the Bucs. I don't think you're getting any kind of bargain here. You're getting a bargain because DraftKings always kind of depresses the tight end position in terms of salary a little bit, but you're not getting a bargain relative to the other tight ends. So, yeah, on initial builds, it wouldn't be a pay up at tight end type of week for me, but those are the builds that won a ton last year.
Is it a pay up for tight end kind of week for you, Steve?
I don't think necessarily. I think there is some value down at some of the tight ends here. But, looking at these 2 guys here, I mean, both of them are monsters in the red zone. Both of them just had over a 25% target share in the red zone for their respective teams last season. Obviously, we saw Kittle set the record for tight ends receiving yards last year. But putting these 2 together, then the quarterback comparison that we have, I mean, it's Patrick Mahomes or Jimmy Garoppolo. Obviously, you're going to go with the Mahomes side here with Travis Kelce. Kittle was getting fed all these yards, kind of like what Adam was alluding to, because there was really nobody else on the field for them to throw to, that whole carousel of quarterbacks that they were going through. So it just kind of feels like, Kelce's going to remain that guy. He's going to be able to get the targets. He's going to get the reception. So I think it's still going to be Kelce at the end of the day.
Yeah, Jules, for Kittle to take over the throne, really, the label of top tight end, I mean, you would think he'd have to make more trips to the end zone, more than 5.
Yeah, absolutely. And these guys are right on. I mean, San Francisco is just getting some targets back, and that's going to hurt his target share. So with Kittle, he's going to have a fantastic season, I'm sure. I like him as that tight end 2-3, but it's a little too hot of a take for me to say that he'll dethrone Kelce. I think Kelce's still in the best spot overall in terms of season long. That doesn't mean he's the best value at 7,100 as the most expensive week 1 tight end. I still prefer, and I said I'm not really much of a Mahomes fan at 7,200 in week 1. That means I'm probably not playing Kelce at 7,100, although he did manage 18 DraftKings points in that game last year. He caught 5 balls for 100 yards, but I kind of like, from a tournament perspective, if I'm going to play Jameis Winston a lot, I don't mind playing George Kittle on the other side and paying up 6,600 and going for a little bit of a game stack there. But from a cash perspective, if you're trying to make a safer lineup, yeah, I think it's a week you have to pay down at tight end.
I would say, though, that Jacksonville has been susceptible to tight ends in prior years as well. So, especially from a tournament perspective, I think Kelce is a really intriguing play for week 1.
And you mentioned earlier how much you like Carson Wentz because of his weapons. So Steve, Zach Ertz, third highest salary at the position, 6'1". So in your eyes, what makes him part of that tier 1 of tight ends? Or is he more of like a tier 1A kind of guy?
I think he's a 1A because I think we're going to see some regression from Ertz this season. I mean, we talked about earlier the receivers that the Eagles have this year. I mean, the addition of Deshaun Jackson, I don't think it's really being talked about enough because the Eagles really didn't have that downfield threat last season. And now they have a guy like Deshaun Jackson who, at times kind of felt like he needed to be the wide receiver 1 when he was with the Bucs. He doesn't need to be anywhere close to that this year. So just getting him into the mix here, I think, Alshon Jeffrey is going to be healthy at least for now to start the season. Like, there's a lot of weapons for Wentz to go to that he's not going to need to rely on Ertz as much. And Ertz is not really a big play guy either. He only averaged 10 yards per reception last season, so he's not that guy that's going to consistently put up those big fantasy points. So I think he's definitely in a tier below. He's up there. I mean, he definitely gets the production, but I don't think he's in the same class as these guys.
Jules, you like his price point for him, 6'1"?
No, I would rather pay up $500 more to get Kittle or pay down for the guys that we're going to talk about later on in the segment.
Okay.
I just think his price point is right in an area that just doesn't interest me given the blowout potential against Washington as well. Philly's at home for that game. I know Steve likes Wentz, but Ertz could sure do some damage in the first half, but it's not necessarily a spot where they're going to have to keep their foot on the gas for the entire game. So he's definitely a top 3 season-long guy. He's not a guy that I'm targeting week 1.
Okay, Brendan, you have a Facebook question right now, is what I'm being told.
I do. So we're going to get into these next tier of guys in a moment. In the next question, you'll ask the panel, Emerson, but want to get the thoughts from the now. Hunter Henry or Evan Ingram in cash games for week 1?
Okay, gentlemen. Adam, you want to start with this?
Yeah, I think if you have the money, for sure, Evan Ingram is a no-doubt play, and we'll see what happens with the Giants wide receivers. Golden Tate is appealing his suspension. I'm not sure that's going to go through. Sterling Shepard has had finger issues. Corey Coleman tore his ACL. I mean, Evan Ingram is essentially an oversized wideout. He's like 6'3", 240, ran in the 4.4s. There's not many people on the planet that run and jump and are as athletic as Evan Ingram. So I think he will be a huge focal point for Eli Manning, and I think Evan Ingram will have a really good game despite a tough matchup at Dallas.
Steve, you want to weigh in on this?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more with Ingram. I mean, obviously, just the Giants' wide receivers core has been absolutely decimated. We haven't even taken a single snap this season. It's just been amazing how their luck, if you want to call it that, has gone here. And, with the questions with Golden Tate and such, but in tournaments, I think Henry is an intriguing option, but I think Ingram is definitely going to be the play here in cash.
Jules?
Ingram for all the reasons these guys said, and on top of it, let's look at the matchup. Dallas didn't rank very highly against tight ends last season. The 2 best games of Ingram's rookie season both came against Dallas. He averaged 20 DraftKings points against them last season. So on top of all these season-long reasons, the matchup seems to dictate a good spot for Ingram.
All right, so Jules, I mean, we are talking about a position here that was pretty inconsistent, fantasy, fantasy speaking here, and that's kind of reflected with the next run of players on this list: O.J. Howard, 5K, Evan Ingram, 4,800, Eric Ebron, 4,100. So a 2-part question here. I'll just throw the first part at you, Jules. For Week 1, which matchup do you like better?
I mean, I just mentioned the matchup that works for Ingram that he played well in last season. I really like the spot for Ingram and O.J. Howard. We've been talking about Jameis. We've been talking about Kittle. If I like those guys, I have to like O.J. Howard at a pretty cheap price point, $5,000. It saves you over $1,000 off Ertz, and the rest of those guys are even more. So, I would say Ingram would probably be the cash play there. O.J. Howard, the tournament play for me, and I like both of their matchups a lot.
And Steve, you just mentioned how the Jags can be susceptible to being beaten by the tight end. That's right. O.J. Howard's there.
No, I definitely like O.J. Howard, and I think people forget how talented this guy is and what he can do on the field here. I mean, the Bucs no longer have Deshaun Jackson. The Bucs no longer have Adam Humphries. These targets have to be eaten up by somebody here, and this is why for somebody who's been injured as much as he is still being taken as a 4th overall tight end off the board, going around late 4th round, early 5th round in season-long drafts here. The hype on Howard is real. We've seen what he's done in limited time in the NFL. We saw what he did in college. I think it's just another stellar matchup for him. And if they can keep him healthy and on the field, And if they can figure out everything in Winston, he could be in line for a stellar year.
Yeah, I mentioned the Jacks as you were talking about Kelsey earlier. But for you, Adam, who can you see out of these three, Howard, Ingram, Ebron, making that leap to the Kelsey, Kettle, Ertz territory?
Oh, well, I mean, definitely not Eric Ebron. I think Zach Ertz is a disaster pick. I think it's one of the worst picks in season long that's going right now. I've talked positively about a lot of guys. I have to.
Finally.
Yeah.
You're showing your true colors.
The Zach Ertz and Ebron are both two, I think, of the most overrated players in going in season long right now. I mean, Zach Ertz' average depth of target is so low. He needs so many targets to capitalize on. He's just not going to get it with Alshon and Deshaun and Miles Sanders and JJ Arcia Whitehead, and they're so loaded. Nelson Aguilar. So yeah, I think Zach Ertz is a really bad play. I think that Eric Ebron is a really, really bad play with Jack Doyle coming back. They added Paris Campbell. Eric Ebron last year, when Jack Doyle was healthy, actually played behind Jack Doyle. So yeah, it's definitely not Eric Ebron. So it's obviously between Howard and Evan Ingram, and I think Evan Ingram will probably see more volume. And I'm curious to see how they use Cam Brate, the Bucks do in the preseason, because if they start cutting into O.J. Howard's work with the first team a lot with Cam Brate, that would be a problem for me.
All right, Brendan, where does our loyal Facebook audience sit on this one?
Okay, so it is O.J. Howard who takes the victory in this question, 43%. Evan Ingram trickled in next at 40%. And then it is Eric Ebron coming in at 17%. And I see some people on Facebook have chimed in about this. They make a good point. Evan Ingram is taking on the Dallas Cowboys, and he had 2 excellent games against them last year. The opener, he had 19.7 DK points, and then to close the year, he had 21 plus. But the fans have voted O.J. Howard as the play, and he's the most expensive. He's up here at fourth, $5,000 for week 1.
So they seem to agree with you, Adam. Do you agree with the way our Facebook viewers have voted, Steve?
I think they did pretty well. I think you guys did a good job here. But, like I said,
be nice, please.
I mean, Ingram is a fine play, too.
Yeah.
Like, I have no problem with that. I mean, especially if all the wide receiver issues leak over into the week 1, like, can we lock Ingram for 7 to 8 targets in this game at least? Like, that is some good, that's a lot of production to be looking at for week 1 here. So, either one of these guys, I think, is in a fine spot.
I mean, I'll call out the viewers a little bit here. They got it right in terms of that it should be neck and neck between Howard and Ingram, but the 17% that voted for Ebron have no idea what they're doing. It should have been a 50-50 call between Howard and Ingram. Those are clearly the two guys here. And Ebron's going to take a step back with another, co-tight end 1 in Jack Doyle and all the weapons that Andrew Luck has to throw to. So this is a 2-horse race here. There should not be Eric Ebron even in the mix.
At Julian Edlow on Twitter.
I'll take the hate. I'll take the hate all day long.
But he's not on Instagram, so don't look for him.
I gotta shelter myself.
You don't want to see what he does. Yeah, don't worry. You're going to start your Instagram account next week.
Next week. Yeah,
look for it. It's really exciting. Now I just put so much pressure on you. Jules, though, an interesting salary here on September 8th, first Sunday of the NFL season. Hunter Henry, we just heard Brendan talk a little bit about him. At 3.9, so missed all of last season, did play 14 snaps in that playoff loss to New England. The general consensus, I think, here is that he could have a breakout year in this Chargers offense. So would you roster him in week 1?
I think as a tournament play, he's fine. Indy ranked, near the bottom of the league in terms of tight end points allowed on DraftKings. So the matchup on paper is good. He's had a while to heal up. He essentially didn't play last year, even though he was on the field a little bit in that playoff loss to the Patriots. So assuming he's in good health, which it appears that he is, I think that he's a solid value. I'm not sure that I am sure. I'm not ready to trust him in cash for week 1, but let's see what he is. He's cheap enough to be a tournament play. And maybe he has a breakout game and the week 2 salary doesn't quite adjust and we'll have something to go on there.
Adam, he kind of feels like a low-risk, high-reward guy right now.
I like Henry. I've been a Hunter Henry fan for a long time. When we last saw him, when we last saw him healthy, I mean, he was second among all tight ends in yards per route run, which I think is one of the most predictive stats, and he was only behind Rob Gronkowski back when he was last healthy. Obviously, health has been a major issue for Hunter Henry, but I think at 3,900, he intrigues me a lot, maybe too much, because I do like him a lot.
All right, Steve, so for tournament, yay, nay. For cash, yay, nay.
I mean, he's more of a tournament option. I mean, like I said, we haven't seen him on the field consistently, although some analysts at other avenues want to play him when he's not even healthy. That's one thing. But look, he's someone who should be on the field almost every snap. I mean, he's a great blocker, so I mean, he's going to be on the field. And in the 2 years when he's been healthy, he's caught almost 70% of his targets, averaging 13 yards per reception. And the Colts have been amongst one of the worst teams against opposing tight ends, especially last season. They allowed an average of 15.4 DK fantasy points last year to opposing tight ends. So for someone that cheap, there's really no Antonio Gates anymore. Like, this is going to be the top tight end in this offense. I don't see where you can go wrong here. It's not going to take much for him to return value on his salary.
All right, Buke, so who would you say your favorite tight end in week 1 is going to be?
As of right now, I think it's going to be O.J. Howard. You know, we've been talking about it. Obviously, Facebook is a big fan of him too as well, so you guys are smart. But I think there's just a lot to like about Howard, about the Bucs offense as a whole, and the matchup.
Are you flexing over
No,
here?
I'm trying to see my notes here. I'm the only one on earth with a loose leaf.
Just put them out. It's fine. Like, you guys have 2 hours of material.
Nobody's going to be able to read them anyway.
Because I'm looking over, I'm like, is he trying to compare his arm to my arm?
I would never.
That's not going to work.
Yeah, it's not going to work.
All right, your top tight end in week 1.
Oh, gosh. This is tough, man. I think if I can find the money, it would be Evan Ingram. I think if I was going to punt it off, I would go to a guy that we haven't talked about yet, and that's Jordan Reed. I mean, nobody wants to talk about
injury-prone guy, but having a good camp.
Totally.
I mean, all the season-long dudes have just been burned by Jordan Reed so many times. They don't want to play. They don't want to play him ever again. All the reports out of Jordan Reed are absolutely glowing from camp, and I think, as we previously mentioned, had double toe surgery, and he was like, I couldn't move last year. All the reports are he's fine now. He's back to the way he was. He's still only like 30 years old, so I'm optimistic that Jordan Reed at 3,600 can get 6-7 targets, maybe more, and do something with them.
Jules, before we take a break, how about your top tight end week 1?
Evan Ingram for me. I'm going to try and find a way to get that 4,800. If I can't, not necessarily a cash option here, but I'll give you another old injured guy who is cheap in Delaney Walker.
Nice. That's a good one.
Thanks, Steve.
Reed really liked Delaney Walker.
Yeah, I mean, but that was talking season long, and
yeah.
He's not going to have a good season because he's probably going to get hurt. But we can get him while he's fresh in week 1 and take advantage of that. And then if Reed has him highly ranked, I'm sure he'll crash and burn and have a terrible season.
Yeah,
Reed's a
coming
nice
back
guy.
from a big injury. All right, we still got running backs, got DSTs, flex plays to get to. Wide receivers, though, are on the rundown next. That's right after Mike Francesa chimes in on the AFC East race.
All right, Mike, I'm going to ask you this question, not because it's a good one, but because I'm contractually obligated to do so.
Go ahead.
Who's your pick to win the AFC East?
I wish that I could pick somebody else. I wish. It won't be close.
I'll tell you this. The Patriots are minus 625 on the DK Sportsbook. The Jets are next at plus 700. So even from a betting standpoint.
I think the Jets will finish second. And how unbelievable it is that Fitzpatrick has a already clear lead to be the Dolphins' starting quarterback. A clear lead. Now, either that was a message being sent very early to Josh Rosen, or how did he get a clear lead when we hadn't even had a couple of practices yet?
Right.
And he's already got a clear lead, and the coach says, well, he has shown tremendous leadership in meetings. Oh, really? That's how he got a clear lead in meetings?
Maybe he's really well read. He went to Harvard. He's got a great understanding of everything. Maybe Josh Rosen's a dope.
I like Fitz a lot. I think it's an early message to the kid to get his act together because, listen, Fitz is one of the great journeyman quarterbacks. He is a guy that you would root for, and I've rooted for forever. I love him personally. He's an old Mike and the Mad Dog favorite going way back. I love him. He went to the Mike and the Mad Dog reunion and never moved. Sat there the entire night. Never moved the button. We love him. But you know what? I'm shocked that he's got another starting job. It's about his 18th.
Oh, I'm not shocked at all. The guy's played for what, 5, 6, 7 teams. He always finds a way into that starting role. Always.
I would have thought Josh Rosen was a lock to start this year.
Even if he was a lock to start week 1, Fitzpatrick was still going to get his chance because he always does.
He does. It's amazing what he's done. It's the career he's had is one of the great careers. And if he plays, he'll have a game where he'll throw 4 touchdowns in the season, and then he'll have a game where he throws 5 interceptions.
Yeah, it's either the Fitzpatrick, Fitzmagic, or the Fitztragic. You never know what you're going to get. Saints are coming off a 13-win season. They ran away with the NFC South last year. The Falcons, Panthers, they couldn't even crack 500. The Buccaneers, they were a total joke. Saints are minus 167 on the DK Sportsbook to repeat. So who do you have winning that division in 2019?
Falcons are going to be improved. Saints are a team on a mission. On a mission from day one. And Dawn knows it. They know it. This is a team very much on a mission. Saints win the division.
One more of these. The Rams, defending NFC champs. They won the West, also 13-3 last year. The Seahawks, they made the playoffs as well, so it was a very good division. The Niners should certainly be better this year with a healthy Jimmy Garoppolo, but with LA at minus 182 to win the division again, I'm assuming that's your bet?
Easy. Again, a team that I think from everything and listen, the coach and the quarterback got a rude awakening. They had a horrific Super Bowl in every way. The quarterback played as badly as any quarterback I've ever seen. Ben Roethlisberger played that bad in a winning effort, which we all know. But that performance, which I was at, was one of the worst big game performances I've ever seen the quarterback play. The way the Ram defense played in that game against Tom, if he had played even a decent game, the Rams win that Super Bowl by 2 touchdowns. He had open receivers all over the place. He had guys wide open in the end zone. He completely fell, just completely couldn't do the job. He completely fell down on the job. And I think he said the right things. I think the head coaches said the right things. I'm going to go on the premise that they're going to be better from that very, very bad loss because they've said the right things. But that was a real rude awakening for both of them at a young age because they were right there on the precipice of being the new stars in the sport, and they both fell down on the job. They really did.
All right. All right. Come on, everyone. Pay attention, please. Back here on DraftKings' Week 1 salary special. I'm Emerson, Adam Levitan, Julian Edlow on the far side, Steve Buchanan. They complete the couch crew here. If you're just joining us, hopefully you're watching on Facebook, where you will notice a cool new feature helping you get more involved with the show so you can answer the same questions I'm asking these guys. You're likely smarter than Julian. Poll questions as well. All that fun, interactive stuff social media thrives on these days, without all the hate, obviously. We'll start talking wide receivers after Brendan Glasheen hooks us up with some of the Week 1 salaries and gives us our next Facebook question.
Well, I think everyone here is pretty smart. And on the subject of wide receiver, it is a very fun position to dissect because there are a ton of storylines, and one of them being a number of players who are going into contract years. Tyreek Hill, Amari Cooper, and the banged-up A.J. Green, who's probably not going to play Week 1. We'll get to him. Julio Jones is up for some dough in 2 years, but the point being these receivers are going to be on a mission from the get-go, from Week 1, to put up huge numbers. They're going to get in the coach's ear. Get me the ball. So, without further ado, let's go to the salaries. Hey, the newest member of the Browns, Odell Beckham Jr. He comes in at number 1, $8,100 against the Tennessee Titans. He missed the last 4 games last year due to a bruised quadriceps. Julio Jones at $8K has pledged he won't play in the preseason. I don't really care. You probably don't care either, but it's worth mentioning. Mike Evans files in next in 4th. He is $7,900 against San Francisco in Week 12 last year when Tampa Bay and San Fran met up. He had a nice game, 20.6 DK points. We've heard about Tyreek Hill and his quad contusion during the training camp, $7,600. That issue is being monitored. Everything should be just fine for him. $7,300 for Keenan Allen, who had a bounce-back year last year after missing the previous season, 2017. A.J. Green is next at $7,200, expected to miss a couple of games with that ankle injury. He underwent minor ankle surgery, so unlikely we see him in Week 1. Amari Cooper is next at $7K against the Cowboys, and remember, he was traded midway through last year. He only saw the Giants once, and that was in Week 17. He had 11 targets. 2 Vikings are next. Adam Thielen, number 8 at $6,800, and then Stephon Diggs at $6,700. Just keep in mind that Atlanta defense was god-awful in the passing game defensively. And then there is T.Y. Hilton at $6,600. Andrew Luck's health is a key, as we discussed with Eric Ebron and also Jack Doyle in the mix at tight end. The same holds for Mr. T.Y. Hilton. Andrew Luck's health key for him to have a good season. So that moves to our Facebook question. It is in. For you, the viewers, which one of these receivers is most undervalued for Week 1? Adam Thielen at 6,800 against the Falcons. Stephon Diggs, 6,700, also against the Falcons. T.Y. Hilton, 6,600 at the Chargers. And we'll also throw in the 11th ranked receiver salary-wise. Brandon Cooks, the Rams receiver, is 6,500 at Carolina for Week 1. So, get your votes in. We'll keep an eye on that. Good luck to you all. Let's go back to the panel and Mr. Lotzia.
Thanks, buddy. Steven, only 2 wide receivers at over 8K in Week 1. So you got Odell here in his first game with Cleveland, 8,100. Julio Jones, he's an even 8K. Either of those 2 guys worth paying up for early on in the season and Week 1.
I mean, you can't go wrong with either guy here. I mean, we're talking about guys with immense amount of talent, the top receivers on both sides here, but I'm kind of siding with Julio Jones in this spot here because I think the ownership is going to be a bit lower on him because everybody's going to be so stoked to be playing Odell Beckham in his new team with the Browns, with Baker Mayfield, but I'm just hoping that maybe, finally, the Falcons will start giving him the ball in the end zone. Mm-hmm. It's amazing. Once they started throwing to him in the end zone the final 4 games of the season, when he had 6 touchdowns, they won 3 of their last 4. Unbelievable. You start giving the ball to Julio Jones, things start happening for this offense. But, it's a slight discount for him, only 200. You're not saving a ton here. Like I said, you can't go wrong with either guy here, but I prefer Jones slightly over Beckham in Week 1.
All right, Adam, who would you prefer between these 2?
I think I prefer Odell, but generally speaking from a strategy perspective, I think when people talk about paying up at wide receiver, you're going to see a wider distribution of outcomes, but their top end outcome is usually typically higher. So, the people it's going to be safer to play, the Kerryon Johnsons and the Dalvin Cooks of the world at really good salaries. The top end of guys like Odell and Julio is so much higher. I mean, 40, 45 points and stuff like that is not out of the realm of possibility for these guys. So I have no problem with either. I think I slightly prefer Odell just for matchup, but there's probably more risk there just as he goes to a new team.
Jules, you look at these 2 salaries, can you make an argument to maybe avoid both of them?
Yes, you can. If I'm going to pick between them, I think I would lean Odell as well. But just looking, and these guys that we have on our poll, I think they're all underpriced. Brandon Cooks probably being the least favorable of the 3, although you can argue that's a really high total game in Carolina. So for me, I think that I'm going to be starting my receivers for Week 1 if I was building a lineup today under 7K with all of them, which means Julio and Odell are out of my lineup. So I think both of them have really high ceilings. They're solid plays, but I think for where I'm looking, and we haven't really talked about running backs yet and where we're going to spend our money there, I think I would rather pay down at receiver because the better bargains are there.
Adam, one of the comments on Facebook, Odell, this is from Mike. Odell at the top of the market makes Jarvis Landry a steal at 5,600. Do you agree?
No. Similar to what I talked about with Zach Ertz, when a guy has a really low average depth of target, he needs a ton of volume to rack up points, and I'm just not sure that Jarvis Landry is going to get it this year with Odell there. I expect him to use Duke Johnson more, expect him to use David Njoku more. So no, Jarvis Landry did not stick out to me even at that salary.
Steve, you seem to be pretty excited about this question.
I've said it before. I'm going to say it again. Jarvis Landry is like the Spirit Airlines of football. It sounds like a good idea, and then when you get on there and you're paying for this, that, and everything, you're pretty much regretting it. So that's how I feel about Jarvis Landry.
They're never going to sponsor this show.
All right, well, that's okay.
I was just going to say, I don't have much of a take here, so my take is going to be we're not getting any Spirit Airlines.
Thank you. The Spirit Airlines of DK analysts.
Some would say that.
Appreciate it. All right, well, these 7K and up tier receivers, guys, it features like Mike Evans, Tyreek Hill, Keenan Allen, A.J. Green, and Amari Cooper here. Green injured. Obviously, we all know that. We know the damage he can do when healthy. But has Amari Cooper done enough in his short time in Dallas to be a top 7 NFL wide receiver, Julian?
No. He was so inconsistent with Oakland. He obviously found something in Dallas, but he had 2 huge games, like over 200 yards and 3 touchdowns, 180 yards and 2 touchdowns. Those were 2 of his monster games last season, and he can also just fall right off the map. So he's not a guy that I'm going to trust in week 1. He's probably not a guy that I'm going to trust in season long, just because I'm not going to draft him as high as other people will, given where the hype is from some of those monster games that he had last year. So for me, yeah, he's going to be a pass in week 1. I just said that all the receivers I'm looking at right now are under 7K, so that's going to be under Cooper's price range.
Adam, are you passing on Amari Cooper 7K against the Giants in week 1?
It's hard to be excited about a receiver on a team whose goal is to build through offensive line and running back. In today's NFL, it's so odd and incorrect to build through offensive line and running back, but that's what Dallas wants to do.
Does it change though if Zeke doesn't show up?
If Zeke is out, I think Amari Cooper would be an awesome play. If Zeke is there, I think that Amari Cooper would be just a little bit too volatile. But man, I mean, it's hard to make tournament lineups if you're making a lot of tournament lineups without Amari Cooper. It's just his ceiling is so massive.
All right, Brendan Glasheen, I hear you have some breaking news. Please break the news for us.
It's perfect timing, Emerson, because we are on the subject of wide receivers, and Pro Football Talk has reported that the Arizona Cardinals have signed Michael Crabtree to a contract. I know we've had some discussion at the top of the show in regards to quarterbacks about Kyler Murray. I don't know. Does this change your feeling about Kyler Murray? You bring in a guy like Crabtree. I'll let you guys take it away and talk about it.
Okay, let's go to Julian, who's absolutely in love with Kyler Murray. What do you think about him throwing some passes to Michael Crabtree?
I saw the DK Live tweet about Michael Crabtree on my phone while I was talking about Amari Cooper, and it took everything inside of me to withhold and let Glash.
You're more than welcome to, when you get the news to break it.
Well, we got to let Glash is our news guy. I didn't want to steal his thunder. There he goes. This just makes me
what's this move? What are they doing?
Well, they're signing a veteran wide receiver, Emerson, to make their football team better. So what it might do is hurt the likes of Larry Fitzgerald. We've got a lot of rookie and second-year wide receivers on the Cardinals that maybe this puts less pressure on, and Crabtree has enough time to climb up the depth chart and maybe start or be ranked above some of these guys. So maybe a little bit less value on these cheap Arizona Cardinals wide receivers. If we look...
No, I'm trying to pull up his numbers here.
Yeah, so some of these cheaper guys definitely become less attractive.
Andy Isabella's
Andy Isabella, 3,400. Butler's 3,100. Hakeem Butler, a rookie that they drafted. These guys probably fall off of the punt play range for week 1. But it definitely helps out Kyler Murray, giving him another veteran receiver. So I like Kyler Murray more now.
Yeah, you definitely would.
Slightly.
Steve, go ahead, because I feel like your opinion here is going to be the complete opposite of Julian's.
Well, I mean, if there's any time I'm not going to get excited for a quarterback is when they sign Michael Crabtree. That's not going to change my opinion or anything like that. But, we haven't seen Crabtree in really a good atmosphere in a number of years now, it feels like. With the Oakland Raiders, had over 1,000 receiving yards in 2016.
Yeah, I was going to say, his 3 seasons in Oakland, he went 9 touchdowns, 8 touchdowns, so not bad, but only 3 last year on 16 games.
I mean, he couldn't have been in a worse environment last year in Baltimore with all the changes and then bringing in Lamar Jackson, who was not very consistent to begin with. But this seems like just another veteran presence. I'm surprised because, Larry Fitzgerald, in his last year of his contract, you kind of see it feels like it's his swan song here. But, I mean, look, it's another able body in that offense. I mean, you can't hate the move. It's not going to hurt them by any means, but yeah, I think it's a little ding on some of the rookies that are coming in this year, though.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like you're thinking, Adam, that this could impact the value of some of the other guys who are maybe going to get some playing. I mean, hell, we don't know if he's going to make the final roster or not right now.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I don't think that Larry Fitzgerald or Michael Crabtree are probably among the best options for Kyler Murray to throw to. I'd rather see him give targets to Christian Kirk. I'd rather see him give targets to Andy Isabella. So yeah, I mean, and I think this kid Keyshawn Johnson, no relation to the Keyshawn Johnson you're thinking of, but
yes, that's exactly what I'm thinking of. It's like you're in my mind.
I think he can really play too. So I'm kind of disappointed for those guys if Michael Crabtree comes in and steals some reps. We'll see if he's actually able to do that though.
All right, next group of receivers, all coming off huge seasons here. Adam Thielen, we got his teammates Stephon Diggs, T.Y. Hilton, Brandon Cooks. Which one is being undervalued in week 1? Steven.
I gotta admit, I'm not crazy really about anybody in this group. We just talk about the Vikings here. Relax. Calm down. We talk about the Vikings here and, just how they could be going towards a more run-heavy offense here, and that doesn't, exactly excite me here. Cooks kind of feels like the guy by default here. I mean, obviously there's some concern here with, Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp back in the mix here, but T.Y. Hilton's in a pretty tough matchup too as well against the Chargers. So I think the tier below these guys are where the more attractive values lie here. But, I'd love to hear what Julian says with his insight here. He's probably going to go with the Vikings guys, who aren't going to get as many targets because they're going to be running the ball the whole game. But, let's see what Julian have to say about that.
Cool.
Julian,
Thank you.
I mean, it's 2019, so I like Dalvin Cook a lot. Not to give away too much of the running back segment, but Atlanta allows a lot of catches to the running back position. They allow a lot of yards per carry to the running back position, so he's going to be a good play. That doesn't mean that these extremely underpriced receivers aren't good plays as well. Atlanta ranked 28th in terms of DraftKings points allowed to the wide receiver position last season. So I think this is going to be a game where, what are you going to, because you're a running team, you're not going to target these guys? Thielen and Diggs were targeted very highly all of last season, and you look at the guys in this tier, I know that we're playing matchups and it's a new season, but you look at fantasy points per game on DraftKings, the numbers are pretty much the same as at the top of the list with your Beckhams, your Julios. Beckham is at the top, 20.5 DraftKings points per game. Thielen, 21 per game. Diggs, 18.6 per game. These guys
sorry, Julian. That looks like a shirtless picture of Julian Edelman.
that was earlier on some of my research. You can catch that on Twitter. Right now I'm looking at the DraftKings slate and looking at these Vikings receivers and why they are very good plays.
Who's the most undervalued in this group here, Adam? And who are you going to be more likely to roster out of these four?
Yeah, I like Steph Diggs the most out of those four, and with T.Y. Hilton also right there. Certainly a very difficult matchup for T.Y. Hilton against probably one of, if not the most talented defenses in the entire league on the road against the Chargers. But yeah, I think that just because the Vikings want to go run heavy doesn't mean they won't throw the ball 30 to 35 times in this spot. And since they have very little at the pass-catching tight end position with Kyle Rudolph falling off, since they have very little at the third wide receiver spot, it just funnels a ton of targets to Diggs and Thielen. I think Diggs is just the better, more explosive player.
All right, Brendan, what's Facebook saying?
So, the fans have spoken. Brandon Cooks and Stephon Diggs, you're out of luck. It's Adam Thielen and T.Y. Hilton tied 38% from that quartet of wide receivers. So, clearly the fans are thinking Mr. Thielen can match what he did last year next to Stephon Diggs. And if Andrew Luck is as good as we think he is, maybe T.Y. Hilton is in for a good year. We have a question from the fans to you guys now. You guys are going to be put to the test. They're wondering about, with no Doug Baldwin for the Seattle Seahawks, is Tyler Lockett in a smash spot? That is coming from Dylan. Is he in a smash spot for Week 1?
What do we think? You giggled when you heard smash spot.
Mr. Smash Spot right here. Mr. Smash
Come on, man. Answer the question.
No, it's just funny to see that. Tyler Lockett, I think, is really underrated in terms of talent. This dude, when the targets go his way, he makes plays, he makes big plays happen, he scores touchdowns. Obviously, nobody is more run heavy last year and really in recent years in Seattle. It's just embarrassing the way that they call plays, and that's obviously a concern. That's obviously concerning against the Bengals team, which is down to offensive linemen and lost A.J. Green and may not be competitive in this game at Seattle. So yeah, I'm not falling out of my chair to play Tyler Lockett, but if this can somehow turn into a back-and-forth game, which would surprise me, Tyler Lockett would play a big role.
Jules, you falling out of your chair to play Lockett?
No, but I think he's a good value, and I love his outlook for the season. He's Seattle's wide receiver 1 now. They're really flipping around with what's going to come after him, I guess. They've been experimenting, I think, with some DK Metcalf at wide receiver 2, which is pretty surprising, but things really thin out there. Lockett is a guy, look through his game log last year, he had so many double-digit, although he didn't go off in many of them, so many double-digit DraftKings point games.
So he's consistent.
That's a very astute observation, Emerson. That is what I'm trying to say.
Educated and
and I think that by becoming the wide receiver 1 in Seattle, it's a very good spot. It is the blowout. There is blowout concern against Cincinnati, and Seattle could just pound the ball that entire second half. But I like Lockett as a good value for Week 1. Love him for the season.
Steven, $6,000 in Week 1 against Cincinnati.
I'm just excited about Lockett, period. Especially in season long, this is someone I'm targeting in almost every draft that I'm taking here. He's an absolute force when he was playing out of the slot. No Doug Baldwin anymore, so this is the solidified number one receiver in this offense. And look, I know that Seattle runs a lot during their games, but I just think Lockett is just being so undervalued here. Immensely talented, can get in the end zone. Like, this is a guy you want to be targeting in season long, especially week one. Like these guys have been saying, blowout potential is definitely there, so that's something that is a bit concerning. But I will imagine that as the season goes along, you'll be looking at Lockett a lot more as the weeks progress.
Adam, favorite wide receiver play in week one right now is who?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Curtis Samuel. I mean, if you're trying to play Christian McCaffrey and Saquon Barkley and maybe Ezekiel Elliott, you're going to need to save some money, and I think Curtis Samuel can do that for you. Just 4,200, running as the clear-cut wide receiver 1A alongside DJ Moore. And as I already mentioned, I think this could be a really good game where the offenses mesh with each other, and I like the way Cam's health is looking, so it's all really lining up for Curtis Samuel, I think.
Steven.
Mike Evans. I think Evans is just in such an incredible spot here. Like I said, if they can work out the kinks with Winston, like this Winston to Evans connection is going to be an absolute force all season long. They're set up with a really good matchup against the 49ers in week one. Don't sleep on that combo.
All right, Jules, you're a wide receiver in week one.
Yeah, I'm going to take the safety of Adam Thielen here. I think he's going to continue to get a lot of targets in Minnesota, like the matchup at home against Atlanta.
All right, good stuff. Running backs are still on the menu. I see some of you guys asking about it on Facebook, but first, we'll see what's cooking with those week one DSTs right after Pat Mayo's week one fades.
All right, thanks, Emerson. Well, obviously, we know people who we like in fantasy for week one, but who is somebody that we should be looking away from, or at least a couple people?
All right, I got two guys, and one is actually at the quarterback position. I don't know if people are going to be all over Carson Wentz as it pertains to week one. He's a pretty good price point, but here's the thing. I've had a series of doctors on my show on the Pat Mayo Experience. Go subscribe to that right now and check out the full conversation. However, with Carson Wentz, his ACL is a bit different than everyone else's, where he got hit on the inside of the leg and it destroyed his knee in a completely different way. So he's actually at a very high risk of both re-injury and more time than you'd expect to come back to round into Carson Wentz MVP form that everyone might project on him in week one. So that entire Eagles offense, the passing game especially, is one that I'm just staying away from in week one. And the other one is just Eric Ebron. Eric Ebron is already dinged up. People are paying a premium for what he did last season, but touchdowns are very fickle. He could go out and score 2 this year. They have 3 tight ends that are viable to score touchdowns week one for the Colts. You have Doyle, you have Mo Alley Cox. Devin Funchess weighs like 900 pounds. He's essentially a tight end as well. They're not going to play 4 tight end sets, and he's still only playing like 50 to 55% of the snaps. So he needs to score a touchdown to produce value because he's not going to go 7 for 155 and no touchdowns. That's not going to happen. It's going to be like 4 for 40 and a touchdown. That's what you're getting at right now, and his price point amongst the tight ends is just too high. You can mine that value from someone either much higher with higher upside or way lower with an equivalent floor.
All right, heed Pat Mayo's warning. Stay away from those guys, Emerson.
All right, the DraftKings Week 1 salary special. It rolls on. You guys on Facebook, keep those questions coming. The new Facebook feature, it is dope. And we've got another question. See, that's why I did D and then like 6 O's and then P.
It said it. It said it.
All right, and then we've got another question to throw you away right now. Brendan has that right after he hits us with the top DST salaries for Week 1.
Well, Emerson, thank you for that great presentation of your vocal cords.
You're welcome.
When it comes to week one defense salaries, you get the sense that most are based on the matchup, and that's when Steve Buchanan looks at me and says, duh. But then to take that a step further, Steve, it feels like salaries were determined on who the opposing quarterbacks are. So to the top 10 we go. Ravens are going to face the Dolphins, who are led by Ryan Fitzpatrick in week one. You heard that right, but remember, he was insane the first 3 weeks of last year. Next, the Eagles are going to face the Redskins, and we don't know who their quarterback is yet because the unofficial depth chart says it's Colt McCoy as the number 1 quarterback, then Case Keenum, then Dwayne Haskins, the first-round pick. Cowboys next at 3,500. They take on Eli Manning. The Browns facing injury-plagued Marcus Mariota. The Vikings file in next at 5th. Rams, who kind of teetered off at the end of last year, like they were good but not great down the stretch. Jets and Buffalo. That'll be fun. 3,100. Seahawks at 3,100 against that wretched Cincinnati team. And then the Bills at the Jets, Chargers next as well at 3K. So here is our Facebook question for you as it pertains to defense. This is more of a big picture question for you folks. who will have the best defense among the 3 New York franchises? The Jets, Bills, or Giants? And we'll get the G-Men's salary in here. It's a whopping $2,300 for Week 1 at Dallas, ranked 19th overall on the slate. And remember, the Jets and Bills are facing each other in Week 1, so I'm sure their dollar figures can drastically change for the worse. Who knows as the season rolls on. Back over to you and the crew. Emerson.
Thanks, buddy. All right, guys, time to talk DST salaries for Week 1. So we presented this question to everyone on the Sweat last week. You have the Baltimore defense, number 1 salary, Week 1, $3,800. They're taking on Miami. Adam, you mentioned earlier you just think Miami is in, like, I don't know, maybe tank for Tua mode or something here. But is the strategy this season in DFS going to be rostering the defense that's going up against Miami every week?
We'll see. I mean, I know that was a successful strategy. I think a lot against Jacksonville's offense when Blake Bortles was on his run.
I remember that
of throwing pick sixes. We'll see. I mean, DraftKings has done, I think, an interesting job of pricing defenses all the way up in the 4K range. We saw defenses often get up into the 4K range 2 years ago, and this one to start off at 3,800 is very, very expensive. It's hard to build kind of close to optimal lineups when you have some defenses at 2,100 and others at 3,800. It's very difficult to predict in between there. And you see a quarterback, like they have everybody close, really close together within 1,000 of each other. To have a 1,700 or 2K difference between the bottom and the top defense is really hard to overcome. So if you're looking from an optimal perspective, I think paying down a defense is still going to be the right play usually.
Steve, playing the defense that is facing Miami every week, how viable of a strategy is that going to be in 2019?
I mean, it's definitely not a terrible one, but, when I'm constructing my lineups, the last thing I'm looking at is defense. I mean, that's one. I mean, it's probably one of the most volatile positions that you can roster on a weekly basis. So, to me, I'm just trying to make whatever fits, at the end of my lineup here. I'm not specifically looking to target one on a weekly basis. I mean, you'll certainly have your matchups, like the Ravens against the Dolphins is a matchup that you would sit there and actually consider. But on a week-to-week basis, don't be basing your lineups around what defense to play this week. I just think there's too many range of outcomes that you can get on a weekly basis. So, yes, take a look at it, but, don't be going crazy over it either.
What's your strategy with this, Jules?
Well, I'm definitely not going to target against one team the entire season. That was something that we started off doing last year against the Buffalo Bills. Worked great the first 2 weeks of the season, and then week 3 we've got chalk Vikings defense for $4,300.
Oh, that's right. Allen quarterbacked on the road, and they went up like 28-0 or something.
Yeah, so $4,300, and then the Bills kicked the crap out of the Vikings in Minnesota. You just can't lock in that hard on defense special teams position. Are the Ravens in a good spot? Yes, because they're playing a bad offense and they have a good defense. So I like the spot for the Ravens, but it is week 1. They are in Miami. It can be a place with distractions. It can be a place with a lot of heat. There's some, cause for concern, I guess, but $3,800, I just probably don't want to pay that much. I think it's a fine spot.
What are those distractions?
Steve, I was just going to say, why'd you look at me like
the palm trees, or?
Well, have you ever been out on South Beach, Stephen?
Yeah. Oh, the women.
Well, the drinking, whatever you want to do.
All right. Why don't you guys just save this for like the Sweat After Dark or something? Let's continue on with our questions. Jules, I'll start with you since you have South Beach on the mind. The Browns finishing last season with the 21st ranked defense in terms of points allowed. So much hype around this offense, though, in Cleveland, but their defense has the 4th highest salary in week 1. They're taking on Tennessee. $3,400. Is that a good price for this defense?
Well, for starters, I don't know what South Beach has to do with the Browns, but thank you for that lovely transition.
Very, very well.
I kind of
Michael Scott of me.
I would rather pay $400 less for the Browns defense at home against a Tennessee offense that just kind of stinks. Marcus Mariota, nothing special. They don't have many weapons. Their best offensive player is probably Derrick Henry, who's just a ground and pound guy. So I like taking a talented defense at home against a lackluster offense. I would rather pay the $400 less and get them. But again, it's only $400 cheaper than Baltimore. So I don't know if I want to pay all the way up for one of these, $3,200 plus defenses in week 1.
Steven, what do you think? That Cleveland defense, I mean, are we expecting them to be good this year?
I mean, they made some really good additions. They brought Sheldon Richardson aboard Oliver Vernon is now part of the team too as well. So they definitely made some of the right moves there. Where they took the biggest hit was on their offensive line. We'll see how that ends up panning out with, especially with the Odell Beckham trade there. But it's not a bad spot to pay up. Again, you're not going to sit here and pour over your lineups and think about which defense I need to get into on a weekly basis here. Like I said, I'm just trying to fit whatever makes sense here. Obviously, you don't want to go all the way down to the bottom tier and, take the last one that's available, but it's just such a tough position to predict on a weekly basis here that, I'm not going too crazy here trying to figure out who I want here.
You just mentioned, Adam, you don't want to spend much out of the $2,000 range, right?
Yeah, and I think the Browns actually are a pretty bad play. Marcus Mariota is not an aggressive quarterback at all. He tries his hardest to play it safe, to not throw interceptions, and then also, if the Titans get going, you're going to just get 30 carries from Derrick Henry, and you don't generate any fantasy points just tackling guys, even if your defense is playing well. Just tackling running backs is not how you generate fantasy points. So I don't like the Browns at all. If I was paying up, I would rather spend up on somebody like, the Eagles looks fine to me, or the Seahawks looks fine to me, and other teams like that.
All right, let's get to a question we just presented to everyone on Facebook. We got the 3 New York State franchises. You got the Jets, the Bills, the Giants. They're all in action on the first Sunday of the NFL season. The Jets, $3,100, highest salary among the 3 here, guys. They're going to go head-to-head with Buffalo, followed by, yes, that would be the Bills at $3K. Then the Giants, hello down there, $2,300 facing the Cowboys. Is this Week 1 salary breakdown kind of indicative of how these teams will perform in 2019, Adam?
Oh, I think the Bills have one of the best defenses in the entire league. We're not just talking about fantasy. In real life, the Bills have, I think, a top 3 unit. There's no doubt about it. They're just so loaded, and I like their scheme as well. And they continue to add pieces to the draft. I think the Bills, by far, out of the group that you mentioned, have the best defense, and definitely don't like going down to the Giants. If I was going to spend down, I have some ideas about spending down a defense in Week 1. It wouldn't be for the Giants.
All right, so Steve, my guess is if you have $3,000 left over, you still have to fill your defensive spot on your DraftKings roster. The Bills sound like a pretty doggone good choice then.
Yeah, I would have no problem going there too. I don't think the Jets defense is terrible either. Maybe not the best matchup in Week 1, but looking down at the schedule, I think they're definitely playable according to the matchup here. But, ranking these from 1 to 3, I think that's pretty fair.
All right, Julian, go ahead and tell me why you like then the Giants defense at $2,300 against the Cowboys.
I do like the idea of paying down for some near minimum defenses on this slate. The Giants are not one of them. It just isn't the spot on the road. Maybe who knows? Maybe Zeke winds up holding out, and we get a Zeke-less Cowboys Week 1. But I still probably wouldn't be interested, although that would get the ball rolling a little bit. It's got to be the Bills here. They scored 11 DK points when they were at New York last season, which is the same spot they found themselves in Week 1, and they've gotten more talented. So I think the Bills are a very reasonably priced defense at $3,000 that saves us a little bit of salary off those top-priced units.
Mr. Glasheen, what does our Facebook crowd think?
Okay, so the Giants got 0%.
That's what we should have had with Eric Ebron.
We have a very intelligent.
That's what we should have had with Eric Ebron.
Yes.
But at least everybody's coming around.
Julian, you worried Steve there for a moment, and he breathed a deep sigh of relief. Bills 80%, Jets come in at 20%. And you look, again, the Bills are down here at number 9 of the top 10. And just to remind you folks, their first 3 games, Jets, Giants, Bengals. That price could go even higher by the first 3 weeks of the season. So that is the latest. The fans like the Buffalo Bills, just as you guys do.
All right, good stuff. Gentlemen, how about your favorite defense for Week 1? Steven, start us off.
I think the Bills, we were just talking about it there. I think the Bills are, the way that they're priced here, I think they're actually a really good value. You're not really overpaying for these guys here. And again, it's just going to be one that I think is going to fit rather easily in your lineups when you start doing your constructions. I think the Bills are a good play here this week.
Yeah, by the way, our conversation earlier, I know you guys all basically agree with those poll results, so which is why I didn't ask you about it. So, Adam, why don't you tell me what your favorite defense is? Who your favorite defense is for Week 1, please?
Yeah, if I was going to spend in the mid-range, I think it's Seattle. Already losing Jonah Williams, then also losing Clint Bowling, and then when they lose somebody like AJ Green, it's just so brutal. I think Andy Dalton is actually okay when he has really good pieces around him. Once he loses those pieces, he just totally crumbles. So I think going into Seattle, one of the hardest places to play, is a recipe for disaster for this Bengals offense.
Jules, I know it's early, but let's say you have to fill your defensive spot right now. Who's in it?
Giants.
We've gone over a lot of ones. There's a couple that I probably put above this, but I'm just going to say that I'm not ruling out we're going down to South Beach again, except on the Miami side of this.
What are you?
$2,100 for a Miami Dolphins defense going up against the Baltimore Ravens. Everybody's going to be looking at the other side of this matchup. The total in this game is set at 37 points. The Ravens aren't going to – they don't have the type of offense that's going to go off in this spot. Lamar Jackson can still run wild and have a decent game.
That was your week one starter for quarterback, Lamar
That doesn't
Jackson.
mean Lamar Jackson's not going to have DK points.
Yeah, to me the problem with playing the Dolphins defense is the Ravens
stink?
the Ravens run so much
doing, Julian?
that it's hard to generate fantasy points when a team runs so much. You know what I mean? And that's why I like the more dropbacks the better. Even if I'd rather play, I don't know, like Jacksonville's defense or something like that, because they're going to drop back, or Carolina because the Rams are going to drop back a lot, and hopefully can generate strip sacks and interceptions and all that stuff.
It definitely lacks the ceiling, but given the total, given the amount of points that could be scored,
What is the ceiling?
It's the roof, bro. It kind of sounds like a
10 to 12
value
DK
play
points.
in a way there, Jules, and we're always talking value plays. But how about super value plays? Adam, Steve, Jules will give you theirs for the first Sunday of the season. We're going to run through running backs. That's coming up next, right after Mike Francesa. He's going to deliver his take on week one salaries. For the studs, apparently there are some on the Jets and Giants.
We're all very excited around here for obvious reasons. That's because football is coming up, and DraftKings has released its Week 1 salaries. So let's stay close to you with a few of these. Saquon Barkley is the highest-priced running back on the slate Week 1, aside from Ezekiel Elliott. He's at $9,000, so just a little bit cheaper. Elliott, I think, $9,200. So with the Giants in Dallas, do you view him as one of the best plays of the week in the backfield?
Every single week, the Giants this year, number one, they have finally improve the offensive line. Number two, don't be surprised if they run the veer, considering what their wide receivers look like right now. In all seriousness, they're going to give the ball to him on an incredible number of carries. The Giants are going to run it. They're going to pass it to the tight end off play action. They are going to try and keep their defense off the field. He is going to be a workhorse on a level we haven't seen for a while. He is going to need his rest after games. He is going to get an incredible amount of work this year.
Well, and you mentioned those Giants receivers. With Sterling Shepard's thumb bothering him, Golden Tate suspended, Corey Coleman out injured. Do you think that Evan Ingram, I know tight end, but do you think he's in line for a big season opener in Dallas at just $4,800? There's value there. Eli Manning may be looking for him a little bit because you can only lean on Saquon so much.
Want a guy who will do more than you expect, he is your guy. Because not only will he catch a lot of passes this year, he will catch, I believe, double-digit touchdowns. He will be a huge factor in the red zone. And Eli has always been a tremendous thrower of the deep seam to the tight end. That will be a big part of the Giant offense off play action this year. And you will see this guy. He can outrun just about anybody. He is a mismatch all over the field. He will be used in every way. He will be an enormous factor this year at the tight end position.
Andrew Luck is your favorite player, so maybe your least favorite player is Le'Veon Bell. He's $7,100. That's seventh among running backs. No? Different guy?
I think, considering our relationship, I guess it would have to be that.
Oh, I guess that's true. So we'll give Bell time. He's new to the city.
Give Bell time to grow on me, because I'm sure Bell and I will learn to hate each other quickly.
Well, it's at least already one-sided on your part. But he's seventh among running backs. He's facing the Bills in Week 1. This is going to be his first game for a new team with a new QB and a new system. He hasn't played in over a year, as we know. Would you play him or stay away from him?
Play him. I think Bell's going to have a very big year. I think, again, this coach is much more conservative than people think. I think early on it is going to be a steady diet of Bell. I think Bell is going to be a very big part. I think the number 1 and 2 running backs will reside in New York this year, unless they get hurt statistically. I think they will be the two most frequent carriers of the ball, and I think they will be the two most productive in terms of yardage backs in the NFL this year if they stay healthy.
You are a big Sam Darnold guy. Is he a good value play at $5,100 at home against Buffalo?
Big. Big, absolutely, yes. I love Sam, and they will want to make a very big stand early. And I think right out of the box, it'll be a very good week one. Yes, absolutely. And I am a big Sam guy. I think Sam's going to have a big career. I'm worried about the offensive line on the Jets, but I think they have a couple of players that can really get some mismatches. Anua can, Anderson can, and I think Bell, despite the fact I don't like Bell, he's a selfish guy. I wouldn't want him anywhere near my team. He's a very talented, versatile back, and they will really exhaust him. I think early in the season, they will go to him a lot. They will throw it to him a lot. They will utilize him in a lot of different ways. I think he will be a very, very much a feature guy. Both he and Saquon will be very much feature guys right out of the get-go.
Mike, always a pleasure.
All right, in case you haven't heard us mention it a bajillion times already, you are watching the DraftKings Week 1 Salary Special, and we're giving you guys watching on Facebook an opportunity to play a big part in this show. Please pay attention. You can answer some of the questions that I'm asking Adam and Steve and Julian throughout this show. Turning the page now to running backs. A lot of you guys have been demanding it on Facebook. We will deliver. We're going to start with Brendan Glasheen, who has Week 1 salaries for us. Take it away.
Should we call this the drama position? Because truly, where to begin? How about Zeke Elliott? That's a good place to start. He is yet to report to camp, and he has to report to camp by Tuesday. That's tomorrow, August 6th, to avoid losing an accrued year towards free agency. As of right now, it remains a contract battle between Zeke and the Cowboys. He is number one of running backs for Week 1, 9,200 against the Giants. Again, continuing the holdout due to the contract. Saquon Barkley is the reigning DraftKings top-scoring running back from 2018. In comes Christian McCaffrey. I want to bring this up about McCaffrey because it was just last week Ron Rivera hopes to play him on fewer snaps but still allow McCaffrey to receive more total touches than last year. 326 was the number he hit last season. Todd Gurley next with $7,900 in fourth. Out of the top 10, David Johnson in next, $7,700. Worth mentioning, last year against the Lions, his Week 1 matchup, he had a season high in targets, 10, receptions, 8. He only had 12 yards. It was kind of a weird game. Melvin Gordon, $7,500. The topic of discussion with him, he wants the Chargers to trade him, holding out as well. Le'Veon Bell files in next, $7,100. The obvious storyline there, he didn't play at all last year. And as we all found out, he apologized to us and to all of you that he didn't help your lineups.
Thank you.
Joe Mixon, $6,700. Nick Chubb, $6,400 in ninth. And then Damian Williams at $6,300, who was announced to be the starting running back in April for the Chiefs, but he's missed about a full week of practice time. Indications are Carlos Hyde is challenging for RB1 duties at the Jags. So, finally, as Emerson mentioned, you guys want to talk running backs. We want you to answer this question for us. It's a juicy one. Would you rather play Saquon Barkley or Ezekiel Elliott in Week 1? It's very juicy, but also very simple. Some notes on this question. They're the highest priced players on the Week 1 slate overall. Zeke's contract dispute, an obvious factor. This might be more of a wait and see. So expect that from Julian when the question's asked to Julian. He might decide to table that question. And then Saquon has also mastered the Cowboys' stingy defense from last year. He averaged 26 DK points across 2 regular season matchups. Get your votes in. We'll reveal the vote shortly. Over to Emerson.
Wow. So much juice.
I don't even know how Glash burned me. I was like adjusting something and I just heard my name.
Yeah, no.
It sounded like a zinger.
He roasted you, bro. It was a juicy roast. And I have a juicy question for you, too.
Oh, boy.
For you three, because I'm going to ask you as well, Julian. Let's see, top 2 salaries. So, yes, we just heard Brendan mention it. Zeke Elliott, $9,200. Saquon Barkley, $9,000. Giants and Cowboys, they face off in Week 1. Who you got, Adam?
Oh, boy.
Oh, go ahead.
This is juicy.
Answer the question.
This is juicy. Yeah, I think I'll go with Zeke, and I do think that they will come to terms, or he'll report, et cetera, et cetera. Unlike a team like the Chargers, like the Cowboys literally can't afford not to have Ezekiel Elliott, where I think the Chargers can replace Melvin Gordon pretty seamlessly. But anyways, the way that the Cowboys used Ezekiel Elliott in the pass game last year was something different and a change, which really raised his floor. And just an overall better offensive environment, I think, home against the Giants than it would be for Saquon going down to Dallas, where things could really get off the rails for the Giants.
All right, Steven, which one of these big, beefy meat eaters do you like in week 1?
Yeah, we were talking about Zeke Elliott here and how he started to receive a lot more. I mean, we heard that before the season started, and it actually came true. Like, it's actually something that was mentioned, and then we actually saw it progress as the season went on here. So that just makes Zeke so much more valuable. That's such a pivotal part of the game now. And I just think, like Adam said, and I think we all expect, everything's going to get worked out with the contract situation. We'll see Zeke on the field for week 1 here. In the grand scheme of things, I think Zeke's in a much better spot here than Saquon Barkley. Barkley's going to get a lot of looks here. He's going to have to be extremely busy with how decimated the Giants' wide receivers are at this point here, but I think it's still going to be Zeke.
I mean, hell, you just heard Brendan mention, if he doesn't show up by tomorrow, he doesn't hit free agency for a whole another year on top of the 2 years on his contract currently. But who do you like in week 1? Let's say Zeke does show up, Julian.
Yeah, both really safe plays, but I'm leaning Zeke. Obviously, we want him to. It does depend when he shows up. Like, if he shows up super late, maybe he's a little more.
With Alfred Morris, right?
Sure. Yes. That's what you should do. Maybe he'll be a little bit out of shape. Maybe he won't be, quite where we want him to be. But overall, it's Zeke. He's at home. He's playing against the Giants. We've got the Cowboys as roughly 7-point favorites in this one. That should lead to a lot more ground and pound.
We're not saying Saquon is a bad choice. We're just saying between the two. Correct?
Correct.
Yeah, that's what I was in the middle of talking about.
Okay, well, go ahead. You take 9 hours.
So it's a better matchup against the Giants slightly for Zeke. You lost my whole train of thought, but I'm going to play Zeke.
All right, let me go to Steve then, who always has his train of thought, training in his mind. Do either of them have a chance of not living up to the hype in 2019?
It's definitely going to be Saquon Barkley. Just the offensive line in front of him is going to be a problem. It was a problem last year, too, as well, and I think that just really goes to show how talented this guy is, but it's going to be hard to replicate the production that he had last season to this season here. They're going to have to rely upon him more with all the injuries that they have here. That might be a good thing, or that could end up being a bad thing here, but I think with all things considered, the Cowboys' offensive line much stronger than the Giants, but it doesn't take much to be stronger than the Giants at this point here. But I think Barkley definitely has the potential to disappoint. Will he disappoint? I don't think he will, but of the two, I think he has a greater chance.
Adam, it's tough to see Saquon repeating his successful rookie year, right?
Yeah, but it's impossible for him to fail just because even if he fails, he's going to catch 6 or 7 passes a game, and it's just going to be a crush then. So it's almost impossible for either one of them to truly fail.
Jules?
Yeah, I guess Barkley has the lower floor just because of the offense that he's in. The Giants aren't gonna win many games, and they have the worst offensive line. They're gonna switch to Daniel Jones at some point, and that's gonna allow that's gonna most likely 6th overall pick. So, assuming that does happen, that's gonna create spots where you can stack the box against Barkley and put more bodies around him. But just based on the number of touches he's going to get, both of these guys are going to be elite plays all season long.
Well, the question I presented to you guys, it appears, Brendan, that our Facebook fam disagrees with the panel.
Yeah, I kind of feel bad for Julian now because you told him it takes 9 hours to think this through. Well, it might be worth all 9 because the fans disagree with all of you. 68%, so not all, but 2/3 about agree that it is Saquon Barkley over over Ezekiel Elliott. And look, he is $9K, Barkley, so maybe an hour for each $1,000 you spend, right, Julian?
I still don't get the joke because I wasn't listening when you said it, but great.
You did. You lost your train of thought again?
Yeah. He's just burning you, dude.
So,
I said I felt bad for him.
We all feel bad for him.
Thanks, guys.
Adam, again, we go back to, listen, there's no wrong answer here, is there?
No, I don't think so. And yeah, we could bring Christian McCaffrey into the mix too, and it's really hard for him to fail.
And we will. That's our next question.
Yeah, it's really hard for Christian McCaffrey to fail also. And I think in terms of offensive environment for week 1, Christian McCaffrey, I've talked about a bunch, but he's in the best one.
And Steve, should Christian McCaffrey be in the same salary, echelon as Zeke and Saquon here? Because he's $8,800.
We saw McCaffrey just take such a leap last season from his prior season here. We saw his yards per carry jump from 3.7 to 5 last year. And then there's just just nobody behind him that he has to worry about. Like, they did draft a running back in the 5th round there with Jordan Scarlett, but he's not a pass catcher, so, how much is he really going to be utilized in this offense here? Like, it's just Christian McCaffrey, just kind of like with Dallas. It just Ezekiel Elliott. It's just Saquon Barkley here. So it makes total sense here. And, for him to be the cheapest of the group, I think it's reasonable, but, I will take an 8,800 Christian McCaffrey in week 1 on any day here.
All right, Julian, what do you think? Have you seen pictures of Christian McCaffrey lately, by the way?
Yeah, his biceps are bigger than yours.
Dude, yes, he's like the only person, but he's put on like 300 pounds of muscle in the offseason. That's ridiculous.
That's a lot of pounds of muscle. I think that might be a little overblown, but I do like him at 8,800. And look, I think let's say I prefer Zeke to McCaffrey in like a cash lineup or something like that. And I'm not saying that I do. I might want McCaffrey, but if that like $400 when you're building your lineup, for example, you don't have it there to get Zeke and you have to take McCaffrey, that's something I'm totally fine with doing. Like, all three of these guys have such safe floors. They're going to get so many touches that they all belong in the same tier. McCaffrey is definitely in there. And the little bit of savings, while it doesn't necessarily sound like much, you say they're all just good plays, if it helps your roster construction in week 1, McCaffrey can be your guy, the anchor of your lineup.
Yeah. Guys, the next group, though, features a whole bunch of question marks here. I mean, Todd Gurley, is he over that knee injury that slowed him down late in the season and in the Super Bowl? David Johnson, can he return to fantasy prominence here after an inconsistent year in Arizona? Let's see, Le'Veon Bell took a whole stinking year off from football. Can he return to his old form? This group. Then there's Melvin Gordon right now, who is holding out. We don't even know who we can trust in week 1, I guess, with all those guys. But if you had to pick one, who would it be, Adam?
Oh, it's David Johnson. I mean, they are going to play some version of the air raid where they are in shotgun almost on every play and they run 4 wide on almost every play, and that's going to lead to a ton of David Johnson targets. And, I mean, he's just so good in that role, similar to Christian McCaffrey, the way he can run routes and catch the football. So David Johnson at 7,700, I think when people start doing serious projections, is going to project as one of the better players on the slate at that salary.
And Steve, so out of all these guys here, again, Gurley, Johnson, Le'Veon, Melvin Gordon, who do you trust all season?
I mean, it's going to have to be David Johnson by default here. I mean, I've talked about not being too crazy about him yet. I would rather see something, how they're going to use him first, because we all were burned by him last year. I always kept feeling like, okay, this is going to be the week that David Johnson's going to finally start breaking out. We never really saw that here, but obviously this whole offense is being redesigned here. We're going to see a whole different look for this Cardinals offense. So, realistically, you want to have David Johnson to be the guy you trust. Le'Veon Bell is going to be one of those sexy names here, but the Jets' offensive line is absolutely atrocious. I don't know how to say that in a more family-friendly way. It's just an absolute mess.
We're on the internet. You can say anything you want.
I've been told otherwise. I'm going to play it safe on this one here, but there's just so many questions with Le'Veon Bell. Todd Gurley, C.J. Anderson's playing over you, dude. Even in the playoffs, something's going on there. And then Melvin Gordon is just way too much of a question mark at this point. We don't even know where he's going to be playing come week 1, so it's got to be David Johnson.
Jules, out of these 4, the one you trust in week 1, is it going to be the same guy you're going to trust for all season?
It is, and I'm sorry to be boring, but I just agree with the guys here. It's David Johnson week 1. It's David Johnson for the season. They're all in this section for a reason. They have question marks, and I buy into the question marks on the rest of these guys. I love Melvin Gordon as a player, but his question mark is a holdout, and his value to the Chargers is not the same as Ezekiel Elliott's value to the Dallas Cowboys. They can move on with Austin Eckler and Justin Jackson and most likely be fine. The Chargers went 4-0 without Melvin Gordon last season. So Gurley's got a health issue. Bell, we need to see what he is in this Jets offense. It's got to be David Johnson, who I like regardless. I think he's in a great situation.
All right, the questions are pouring in on Facebook. Brendan, you got one right now?
Yes, sir, I do. From Jarek Grimes, do you think Devonta Freeman, who is at the Vikings in week 1 for 5,300, is he a good value? I remember you guys bringing this up from the start. Jeff Ulrich was a huge fan of Tevin Coleman.
Yeah,
now he is out the door, so is it the Freeman show in week 1?
So what do we think here? Go ahead, Adam. You want to start?
Yeah, I mean, I think generally speaking, Devonta Freeman is an awesome play. I've done a few season-long drafts, and I've consistently taken him the 3rd or 4th round. I think it's good value there. I do think that they're going to continue to try to give either the Judge, Ito Smith, or Brian Hill work. They're not going to give it all to Devonta Freeman, given the injury history that he's had, and that scares me in a spot at Minnesota, where Minnesota's defense could play really well. But yeah, Devonta Freeman is just always going to be a good play, versatile player, plays well around the goal line, plays well in the pass game. 5,300 certainly sounds fair.
Man, yeah, 5,300 kind of sounds like a steal, Julian.
Yeah, you look at where he is. Like, this dude has been a first-round pick fantasy stud in the past, and he's pinned between Austin Eckler and Mark Ingram on Week 1 salaries. So I get why that jumps off the screen at you when you see that name. I don't love the matchup at Minnesota, but from his skill set, like if he's going to play most of the downs, get most of the touches, he's going to be involved in the passing game. He should be involved on that goal line, so it's fair. My roster construction probably won't get me there to him, but I understand why he's appealing, and he's definitely affordable.
Okay, what about you, Steve?
Yeah, I don't think I'm going out of my way to play him, but at 5,300, it's a good salary saver here. I mean, he's already been named not just the starting running back, the unquestioned starting running back. So I mean, this dude's for real. Obviously he's going to be the guy that they're turning to here, but catches out of the backfield, goal line work here. Not the most favorable matchup, but again, you're only paying 5,300. Can't ask for too much there.
All right, so hit me with the running back you like the most for Week 1.
Running back, I like them. Let me check my loose leaf paper.
Yes, look at that. Do you still get the paper at home, too,
Of
by the way?
course, yeah.
You do?
Of course. I support
I like that. I
support
support paper
journalism.
in front of me. I'm a notes and scripts guy.
I
except
support
here
the
they make me use
newspaper
this.
industry.
All right, so what do you got?
All right.
Can you read that?
Barely.
It's tough.
No doubt, I think the favorite play is Dalvin Cook. I think he's going to be one of the most, if not the highest owned players on the entire slate. I know they drafted Alexander Mattison, and I think that they'll try to get him some work, but Dalvin Cook appears to be extremely healthy, which he was clearly not last year. Mm-hmm. And so a guy who just knows what to do on the football field. His athletic measurables are not great, but knows how to find holes, knows how to play in the passing game. And as we've already mentioned, I mean, Atlanta's defense, I think, will be better, and I think that they got some talented pieces back from injury, but I think they're still going to – part of their scheme is just to allow running back receptions.
Steve, you have to roster a running back in Week 1. I mean, who is the guy you must have in your roster?
I totally agree it's Dalvin Cook, but just to be a little bit different here, I think David Johnson is in a really good spot here against the Lions here. They've definitely struggled against backs before, especially passing down backs. That's definitely an area that they have struggled in the past too as well. So I think David Johnson, he's going to get a lot of buzz. It's not going to be a sneaky play by any means, but I think Johnson's in a really good spot.
So Michael Crabtree's not going to cut into his production?
I hope not. I'm really hoping on that one.
The Michael Crabtree edition will not play a role in my feelings about David Johnson. I think he'll be just fine anyway. Dalvin Cook is...
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Dalvin Cook is the guy that... He's the first guy that I want to put in my lineup, period. So the spot against Atlanta, they allow receptions to running backs, just like Adam said. This is a guy that they're going to look to get more carries. Minnesota, he scored, Cook got his health down the stretch last season after being banged up. He scored double-digit DK points the last 6 games of the season. It's too good of a spot to pass on
$6
Dalvin
grand. I feel like you could squeeze that into most lineups.
Very affordable.
Okay, good stuff, guys. These three will have their super value plays for Week 1 still ahead. Top flex options. That'll come up first after Tyler and Pat discuss Week 1 rookie targets.
All right, thanks, guys. Looking at rookies now, I think back to 2011 when Cam Newton came into the league. First game, over 400 yards passing, 3 total touchdowns. Just one of those rookie performances that you probably won't ever forget. Is there a guy, maybe not that great of a performance, but a rookie in Week 1 that you're looking at to say, you know what, he's going to surprise some people?
Well, me, like everyone else, is just looking at the DraftKings pricing and scrolling down a little bit like, oh, there's Kyler Murray. He's the number 1 overall pick. He's going to run. He's going to bomb it in the air raid. And we're not even going to see this offense until Week 1 because they're keeping it close to the vest. Not a terrible idea, by the way. We'll see how that goes as the preseason unfolds. But in this shootout type game, the 4th highest projected point total on the slate, this Arizona-Detroit game, I can see where everything is coming from. The ownership is the thing that worries him with me. When you look at his price point, you see that Garoppolo is right there, Kirk Cousins is right there, and Josh Allen, who does basically the same output as you want. You can pay up for Lamar Jackson, who you know is going to run the ball like 15 times during the game. And he's playing Miami, who stinks. So I love Kyler Murray. I think he has the greatest upside of any rookie on the main slate. I just worry that everyone's going to come to the same conclusion, and then you start betting against yourself of, well, is it worth owning something like a 25% own Kyler Murray in the Millionaire Maker when I can have equivalent players with similar upside and similar floor profiles in those range of outcomes at 2% for exactly the same price. So I like Kyler Murray. I think if you're playing in a cash game, it's a great way to save money when ownership doesn't matter. But if ownership factors in, which it will, and people will love, everyone you'll talk to is going to say, Kyler Murray, Kyler Murray. You can do the rookie stack. You take him and Andy and Isabella. If he ends up winning that receiver job, that it's probably a good spot to avoid, although the upside is very enticing because he has that Cam Newton, not necessarily body profile, but game profile for fantasy that we do love.
Also a former number 1 overall pick. People love those guys in week 1. Back to you, Emerson.
But this is where he lives from the casino.
Welcome back, people. Quarterbacks, tight ends. I forgot you guys didn't have an IP.
Yeah, that's all right.
I should have told
You gotta tell us these
stop
things.
talking. We're coming back on air. So that's on me, guys. That's on me. Just the first mistake I've made. So we have it on the quarterbacks, tight ends, wide receivers, running backs. You can check them all off the list. We're going to go to the flex now. This is not when Julian takes off his shirt and flexes for all of you at home.
Unfortunately not.
No, unfortunately not. Let's have ourselves a little discussion about the best flex option in week 1. Adam, what is your typical strategy when it comes to the flex position?
Yeah, I think in cash, almost 100% of the time I'm playing running back, especially in today's NFL where running backs catch the ball so much. You're almost getting, if you can find 3 good ones, you're almost getting a wide receiver and a running back in 1 with goal line opportunities. So almost always in cash. In tournaments, I think you can make a case for either wide receiver or running back, just because, as I mentioned earlier, the distribution of wide receiver top range of outcomes is actually a little bit higher than running backs are.
Steve, how different is it for you talking tournaments and cash games?
Nope. I mean, Adam absolutely nailed it here. I mean, there really is no other way. I mean, granted, there's other ways that you can do so, but I agree 100% with Adam here. You know, I know some people talk about using 2 tight ends on a particular week. You know, I'm not too crazy about that on a week-to-week basis. I can see some of it sometime with the matchups here, but overall, you know, Adam, how we just described it, totally nailed it.
Okay, what about you, Jules?
There have to be 4 wide receivers in unbelievable spots,
Yeah.
Smash spots, some would say.
A juicy spot.
Yeah, in order to go 4 receivers and 2 running backs in your lineup, especially when running backs are always going to get, usually going to get the most volume. So yeah, I'm especially week 1 with the type of injuries we usually see to the running back position. Almost certainly going to be throwing a running back in there. Steve mentioned the crazy double tight end play. Like the tight end position stinks. There's no reason to be jamming an extra tight end into your lineup. I guess if you were going to be really contrarian in a GPP, like we've been talking about that Tampa-San Francisco game, you could do like a Winston, O.J. Howard, George Kittle stack. Nobody's going to have that, and that's going to make the rest of your lineup really different, but that's just kind of like an off-the-wall GPP lineup.
So it could be either really good or really bad.
Probably really bad, but
okay,
we'll
good. Glad you're recommending that to everyone.
No, I love giving the people really bad
okay,
quiz.
I was just pointing over this way because I thought Brendan Glasheen had a question for us from Facebook, and turns out he does.
Yeah, guys, Joseph Z is asking for thoughts on Devontae Parker. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the new head coach, Brian Flores, they've got a new staff implemented, and they really liked him back at OTAs.
So is the question, do they like him?
Thoughts on him. They just want
Thoughts
thoughts.
on him.
I will take.
Who has
I'll
the thought on
start.
Devontae
I'll
Parker?
start this off immediately.
I'll take
a free square over Devontae Parker. We've been hyping Devontae Parker up for like 5 seasons, and this dude never does anything. I will punt on the position, take a free space. I want no part of Devontae Parker.
Steven, I mean, do you want any part of this offense?
I mean, just a brutal matchup against the Ravens on
Yeah.
top of it. So, I mean, he's 3,900. If he's going to help make some things fit in your lineup, I mean, I guess. But I mean, he was not. There's my radar, and then there's way over there, and he was way over there.
Okay, Adam, I believe he had a few decent games towards the end of the season. Actually, no.
I don't think anyone noticed.
No, seriously, I'm looking at because he didn't play the first couple weeks. Had one 22-point game in there, a 14, and the rest are just duds.
I think he scored 1 touchdown.
Yeah.
And this is a guy. Their expectations.
How does he keep getting the hype?
Right?
How does he keep getting the hype?
This was
the first round pick for them a few years
3
ago.
or 4 years ago, though.
That's okay.
Teams make
He's still
mistakes.
young.
Yeah, I
And
know.
we all
teams
make
make
mistakes.
Exactly. Everybody makes mistakes. No,
Thank you.
I think one thing that people should think about is when you are trying to find somebody low owned for the sake of being low owned, rather than finding a good play who also happens to be low owned. And I think Devontae Parker would fall under the category of playing somebody low owned just because he's going to be like 1% or 0.5%, and I wouldn't do that.
Brendan Glasheen, another question?
Wow. Another question. It's a super question from Rich.
Oh.
Super. That is his last name. Super.
Oh.
Any 49ers wide receiver against the Bucks interest any of you?
Yes.
Oh, I hear a yes.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I think Dante Pettis is one of the better young receivers in this league and battled some injuries last year, but with Jimmy G coming back in this Kyle Shanahan offense, I think Dante Pettis will be a focal point. He's only 5,400. I think he's an awesome play in week 1.
Steve, you clearly agree.
Yeah, totally agree with that one, too. I mean, obviously the focus is going to be on George Kittle because we saw what he did last year. But, when Pettis was on the field, he was absolutely getting the production. He was getting the looks. And, obviously Jimmy G back in the mix here. That should just help his value on a week-to-week basis. But stellar matchup in week 1 against the Bucks.
Pettis, the guy for you, Jules. Is there
Pettis, and Marquise Goodwin is always on the radar at 4,000. Deebo Samuel, a talented rookie at 4,000. I think Tampa has some good receiving San Francisco has some good receiving options, and the Week 1 matchup against Tampa will highlight some of them.
It'll be interesting to see what that team can do with consistency at the quarterback spot with Jimmy G if he can stay healthy all year. All right, we got one more block to go. These guys will give you their super value plays in Week 1. That's right after Pat Mayo's favorite plays of the first NFL Sunday of the year.
All right, thanks, Emerson. Obviously, looking now at these Week 1 salaries. Who do you like the most? Any players stick out to you that you say, okay, I got to try to fix him into my lineup?
Now, fortunately, we don't have to submit our lineups right at this moment because there's a lot of news that could really impact what goes on.
Absolutely.
Like Zeke is currently holding out. Melvin Gordon has asked for a trade. We'll see how that works out. So if those two guys don't play, all of a sudden you have Tony Pollard and you have Austin Eckler and even Justin Jackson down at the bottom of the pricing, which completely shifts this entire slate. So let's presume all of the regulars are going to play in this situation. Dalvin Cook immediately stands out as supreme value at running back going up against the Falcons. Although their defense is going to be revamped, that's going to be nice. And then you look on the injury front with the Giants. Sterling Shepard dealing with a thumb. He may or may not play. Golden Tate appealing a suspension. Probably going to be suspended. Whenever there is a receiver out of the lineup for the Giants, Barkley's going to eat. Evan Ingram at $4,800 is someone that immediately jumps off the page as value. So Cook and Ingram, all things being equal, without any more news about these holdout situations or future injuries, stock up as complete values on the Week 1 slate.
All right, well, it is early, but it's never too early to talk Week 1 salaries and, of course, fantasy football. Emerson, back to you.
All right, last block of the show, the DraftKings Week 1 salary special. Adam Levitan, Steve Buchanan, Julian Edlow. So we're always giving you guys, no matter what sport we're talking on the sweat, we're always giving you guys value plays. But for this show, it's different. For this show, we're giving you a super value play. And for Week 1, Levy, please take it away. I had to ask you who your guy was and actually what team he plays for.
Yeah, I already mentioned the couple guys I like earlier. I mentioned Curtis Samuel. I mentioned Jordan Reed. Those guys are cheap. So
now give me a super value.
A new one I'm going to give you is Miles Sanders. And we'll see how it goes in training camp for Miles Sanders. He's currently competing for how big of a share of that RBBC Philly will use, how big of a share he'll have there. But he's so much better than Jordan Howard. And I think Darren Sproles is pretty much washed up and done. So I think assuming that Miles Sanders sustains health, his talent is going to win out. He's going to have a share of the pass down work. He's going to have a big share of the early down work. And at 3,900, even if he only gets 12, 13, 14 touches, I think Miles Sanders has a pretty good chance to pay it off against the Redskins.
All right, Steve, you got some value plays and definitely a super one.
Yeah, it's going to be Justin Jackson here. And obviously, this is contingent on if Melvin Gordon doesn't return. But let's just say Gordon is not going to be active in Week 1 here. A lot of the attention is going to be on Austin Eckler because he's the perceived number 1 running back. But I think Justin Jackson could very well take that role. He rushed for over 1,000 yards in each 4 years in his college. He's a very capable receiver. He's not going to get a lot of attention here. All that attention is going to be going to Eckler. I think Jackson has the ability to surprise, and I think he'll be someone that won't be too owned, especially with all the ownership going to Eckler in that game.
What direction are you going in here, Jules?
Yeah, I like Adam's guy and Curtis Samuel that he mentioned earlier a lot. I like Justin Jackson a lot. If did you mention him as well, Steve?
Yes, I did.
I'm sorry. I was only listening to Adam. I like Justin Jackson a lot. I was listening to Steve there. That's obviously hinging on Melvin Gordon's status. But if we look in that same price range, we have a guy in Williams in Kansas City that we don't know where he's going to be. So Carlos Hyde at $4,100 in a little bit of a revenge game against Jacksonville. He was on that roster for a point in time. If he's the running back 1 for Kansas City, I think that Carlos Hyde could be a guy that is underhyped to this point that has some potential.
Glash, you got a question for us, buddy?
Yeah, it's coming. Here it is.
Someone's not prepared.
I'm prepared. It's technology. Stuff's got to load and buffer.
Okay.
Chance Fuller What about Mixon with the offensive line changing for the Bengals? Joe Mixon, one of our top 10 running back salaries.
Are you okay?
Start with Julian.
Was that you?
Joe Mixon's talented, but you're going to play him week 1 at Seattle, one of the hardest places in the NFL to play, with guys in this offense, A.J. Green, linemen, guys just dropping like flies. It's becoming a worse and worse spot. Talented guy, but just can't trust the spot.
Does Mixon want to make you vomit, Steven?
I don't know if I want to vomit. I mean, $6,700 isn't the worst salary that he could have here, but yeah, it's a tough matchup on the road against Seattle here. I'm not too crazy about it, but he does have in a tournament. I can see some of the appeal here, but he's definitely not a cash game option for me.
Okay. Would you like to weigh in on this, please?
Yeah, I kind of buy the rhetoric out of Cincy that Gio Bernard is going to be more involved than he was last year. And, if you start taking away even 5, 6, 7 touches from Joe Mixon's projection, you start to run into a lot of problems, especially when you're playing at Seattle.
All right, I'm told you have a user comment, Brendan. Is a question or a comment? Hopefully it's a positive comment.
It is a comment from Mr. Rob Martinez. He says, I usually don't pay up at tight end. He finds it to be a salary saver. Does the panel agree?
Yeah.
Well, it's a yes or no question, Julian.
No, you do not have to pay up at tight end.
Yeah, Steve, feel free to elaborate a little more.
Yeah, I agree here. Look, you look at the tight ends for week 1, and we kind of went over this earlier with Kelsey and Kittle and Ertz there, and obviously they're in appealing spots here, but we also talked about some guys that we like in the lower tier. Adam was saying that he liked Jordan Reed. Delaney Walker was brought up. Hunter Henry, $3,900. There's a lot of value at the tight end position, too, as well. So in tournaments, again, I think paying up at tight end is more of a contrarian option here. I feel like people want to save at tight end and get some of those receivers and running backs in. So I don't hate the idea, but I agree. For the most part, I'm usually trying to find some value at tight end.
Yeah, last year the optimal was...
it was like you had 3 guys choose from, and it was just like a crapshoot after that.
Well, in hindsight, it was easy to say last year that you needed one of Kittle, Ertz, or Kelsey in your lineup every week to really crush. I'm not sure that this year they are all going to replicate their historic years from last year. They literally set tight end records last year, so I'm more prone to let other people kind of pay up at tight end this year and see how it goes at the beginning.
Okay, just a friendly reminder to all you guys at home. You can rewind this show back. We've hit on quarterbacks, tight ends, wide receivers, running backs, flex. The DSTs we threw in there as well. Let's go slate-approved pick, though, here, guys. So, your must roster right now for week 1. I know it's early. Anything can happen. But right now, you look at the guys available, the salaries. Who is a must roster for you, Adam?
Let me consult my loose leaf here again.
Okay. I'll tell you what do you think about it?
No, I got it. I'm ready.
Oh, okay.
I think that given the way the salaries are going to shake out, and there's so much value in these guys, they're going to mention Kyler Murray and Dalvin Cook and everything like that, where you can save a ton of money. I think it's hard not to spend up, and I think the best place to spend up is at running back. And for me, the best running back in the top tier is Christian McCaffrey. So on slates where you can find the money, I like to go for these running backs at the top who are essentially wide receivers also.
Right?
Yep, 88.
Okay. Julian, what about you?
Yeah, Adam said the two guys that I was thinking about and considering here. But what do you I can't get fancy with it and get cute with a slate-approved pick. It's a slate-approved pick, so it's going to be Dalvin Cook for me because he's in a tremendous spot. He might not be quite as high a ceiling as Christian McCaffrey, but Christian McCaffrey is $2,800 more. I just can't get over the price and matchup for Cook.
Okay, Steven, bring us home, Big Daddy.
Loving me some Mike Evans, baby. It is a stellar matchup against the 49ers.
Fail.
I think that was not a fail.
That was supposed to be the slate approved.
Yeah, but calm down back there, okay? Do that to him. Thank you. Mike Evans, slate approved. There you go.
All right, good stuff. What a show. What a time to be alive. Thank you.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Hey, Emerson.
Yeah, I'll talk to you later, dude. We appreciate you guys watching, playing along with us. We're going to be doing much more of this throughout the season. The Sweat, it returns tomorrow night, 6 o'clock Eastern. We'll talk more football, baseball, golf, all that fun stuff. And all this talk about week 1, by the way, guys, we're all waiting for it. But you do not have to wait that long for your football fix. This preseason contest, they get underway August 8th. That's in 3 days because that's Thursday. Are you excited? Yes. Awesome.
Season.
All right, great. Here's Tyler Sullivan with more. Good night, everyone.
Tyler Sullivan here with a Week 1 NFL preseason preview presented by Angel Has Fallen. The hero becomes the fugitive in the action-packed new film starring Gerard Butler, Morgan Freeman, and Jada Pinkett Smith in theaters August 23rd. I'm joined by Pat Mayo of the PME and DK Live's Julian Edlow. Guys, we all know this. The NFL preseason DFS, it's a little bit tricky. So what advice can you give someone playing this Week 1 slate, Julian?
In Week 1, if we even do see any starters, they're going to go a series, maybe 2. So you're definitely not playing any starters, even if they're in there. And we want to identify the guys that are, third, fourth string that are going to get a bulk, maybe play the whole second half of these games, rather than look at who's coming in on the early side.
Yeah, trying to project out how much playing time we're going to see here from the third and fourth stringers. You almost have to look at the teams that have very established number ones and even number twos to that extent. Week 1, the number twos are going to get a lot of run if we get into a situation where it's very firm that this quarterback is the starter. There's no competition for his job. He's probably not going to see the field for more than 5 plays, so immediately go to the backup. They probably get a full half of work.
All right, so with that in mind now, how about a favorite pick for that Week 1 preseason slate, Pat?
All right, I'm going to go under that mantra. Andrew Luck, he's already dinged up with this calf injury. He is the starter in Indianapolis, presumably. That's where we're going to go with this. So Jacoby Brissett becomes a very interesting option that we might end up having here, because he's going to get his full run for the first quarter, probably play from 5 minutes in the first quarter all the way through the first half, and he has that rushing upside that we always love to target as it pertains to DraftKings as well.
I'm going to go with Javon Wims here, wide receiver for the Bears. Wide receiver's been a problem position for the Bears for a while, and they keep looking for guys, and Wims is a guy that they believe in, but they're going to need to see it on the field before they can trust him. He did have 4 grabs for 32 yards in Week 17 of the regular season last year, a meaningless game to the Bears, but that's kind of a good spot to look for projections for the next preseason. So if this is a guy that Chicago trusted to get out there in Week 17, it's a guy that they're going to look to feed in the preseason and kind of see what kind of receiver they have here.
All right, guys, thank you. That'll do it for this Week 1 NFL preseason preview presented by Angel Has Fallen. Hero becomes the fugitive in his action-packed new film starring Gerard Butler, Morgan Freeman, and Jada Pinkett Smith in theaters August 23rd.
What is that?
They're drones! They're drones! Get the president in the water!
How long after this last concussion did the migraine start?
Pretty much right away. So we're going under. Dive deep.
You need to be a lot more careful.
Agent Banning is charged with the attempted murder of the President of the United States.
You said it was from a car accident?
Yeah.
What line of work are you in?
Computer sales?
A statewide manhunt is underway.
Mike?
You okay?
What's going on?
There's somebody else behind us. It wasn't me.
I just want you to come home safe.
I love you. You almost blew me up.
You're welcome.
You can't hide from us. Don't worry about finding me. I'll find you.